Trustee Abrego, will you please convene the Committee on Institutional Advancement?
Thank you, Chairman Day. Will the Committee on Institutional Advancement please come to order? I note that no one has requested to address the committee during the public comment period today. On today's agenda, we have one consent item and 4 action items. The consent item is the approval of the March 2017 minutes. Are there any objections to the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. The first item is a facility naming request from Cal State Northridge. Vice Chancellor Garrett Ashley will present the request. Please begin, Garrett.
Thank you, Trustee Abrego. This item will consider naming Juniper Hall at Cal State Northridge as Bookstein Hall. The proposed naming recognizes the $5 million gift by Harvey and Harriet Bookstein to the David Nazarian College of Business and Economics at Cal State Northridge. This gift will be used to establish the Bookstein Voluntary Income Tax Assistance Endowment, which will further expand the campus's role in free tax preparation services for low-income members of the community. The Bookstein Distinguished Chair in Real Estate Endowment, and the Bookstein Leadership Endowment, which will provide vital resources to advance the college's strategic programs and activities. I now turn this over to President Harrison to say a few words.
Thank you. Harvey and Harriet Bookstein are 2 of the most committed, passionate, and engaged donors that we have at CSUN. Harvey, a partner with the Armanino CPA firm, has more than 40 years of public accounting experience and specializes in providing tax, accounting, and business consulting services to clients in the real estate and high net worth areas. His client list includes many of the region's most influential business and philanthropic leaders and grows every day. In his 40 years of experience, Harvey has developed a new way to approach the work, coining the phrase therapeutic accounting, which is not simply looking at the cause of a financial issue, but diving deeper and finding the root cause of a problem and engaging in a holistic way to find the solution. This approach has endeared Harvey to his clients, and he has become a part of their personal lives. Harriet has made her own mark in the accounting field. She is a successful business manager representing a slew of business and entertainment leaders from the region, and we are so proud of all that they have accomplished professionally. The Booksteins' support and involvement at CSUN are equally impressive. Harvey serves on our CSUN Foundation Board, University Corporation Board, and the Nazarian College Advisory Board. He was awarded the Honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters in 2016. Their philanthropic support has been transformational. Their first $1 million gift established the Harvey and Harriet Bookstein Chair in Taxation and launched the Bookstein Institute for Higher Education in Taxation. This was one of the largest gifts in the college history at that time and changed the course of the accounting program. The gift was the catalyst for other accounting firms to support the program. Harvey and Harriet led the way. They followed that commitment with an additional $1 million bequest commitment that, again, at that time was one of the largest planned gifts commitments in CSUN's history. Over the years, they have encouraged and led their friends and associates to support our programs with hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they continue to do more. All of that leading us to today. The Booksteins' $5 million commitment capped the initial $25 million Nazarian College campaign. It was announced with great excitement and fun at the 50th anniversary gala of the college. Their gift will help us grow our VITA program to new levels with the establishment of the Bookstein VITA Endowment. It will expand and grow our real estate offerings with the creation of the Bookstein Endowed Chair in Real Estate. But the largest portion of the gift goes to the new Bookstein Leadership Endowment, providing the dean with precious, unrestricted funds to seize strategic opportunities. I want to thank Harriet and Harvey again for all that they have done for CSUN and all they continue to do to support our institution. And it is my great honor to recommend the renaming of Juniper Hall, the home of the Business College, Bookstein Hall, in honor of these 2 wonderful people.
Thank you, President Harrison. The naming of the Bookstein Hall at California State University Northridge is an action item before the Committee on Institutional Advancement. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The naming of the Bookstein Hall is approved. President Harrison, would you please escort Mr. and Mrs. Bookstein to the lectern, where they will be joined by Chancellor White and Trustee Day.
Harriet, thank you so very much.
Pleasure.
Congratulations. Thank you. It's terrific. I'll make a few comments. So I wish to thank Harriet and Harvey for yet another incredible gifts to the students of Cal State University Northridge. Your gift, as we've just heard, is a gift to the entire community, expanding tax preparation services for low-income members of our community, creating opportunities to learn and work with world-class faculty, and adding new leadership opportunities to the Nazarian College and really throughout CSUN. And that's really the nexus of a great university when you stop and contemplate this. When we combine a deep commitment to the community that we serve, we have a world-class faculty and staff imparting their knowledge, skills, and innovative spirit to future generations of leaders, and with a visionary eye to the horizon, always seeking new opportunities to grow, expand, and strengthen the university through leadership. So Harriet and Harvey, you really ticked all the boxes, all three ones there that are important, and we're forever grateful for this gift and for all you have done and will continue to do for CSUN and the California State University, and therefore for the state of California. Would you like to share a few words?
Well, first, Harry and I are very honored to be here. We feel it's almost a duty to get back to something that's given us a chance to have the life that we've had. And CSUN was obviously very important in that aspect. Just to let you know a little bit about our family, we have 4 children and 3 children-in-laws, and 5 of them attended CSUN. My wife and I attended CSUN. My ex-wife attended CSUN.
Go easy. Go easy.
So CSUN has been part of our life. What I find interesting is when I attended the school and I went from 67 to 70, at that time the state paid approximately 100%, 95% of cost of the education. Today it's down in the 30s and 40s. And not that it's a good or bad thing, it just is. So it's the obligation of alumnus who have had the opportunity to get an incredible education for the California State University system to give back. And as said before, I'm always encouraging my clients to make sure they don't forget the ones that may not know who they are, but that can help them make a difference. I've always believed that you have to make it easier for the next group to come up ranks. I can't thank enough for Dr. Harrison in allowing me to participate with her at the campus. She's been an incredible leader. Someone I don't want to thank so much is Rob Gonzalez and Matt Renard, who are always picking my pocket, trying to get more money. But I'm really honored that they've become friends, and I really appreciate what they've done to help the campus. At CSUN, I believe that CSUN is, I assume, the same as all other state universities. Money is always at a premium. And I believe that the purpose of giving money back is to give an education, a better education to the kids, to offer them more services, to give a better pay system to our professors and to our presidents of the systems. So again, I want to thank you all for allowing us to be here. It's a real honor to be part of this. It's something I know Harriet and I will never forget, and thank you again.
We have a recognition of the facility naming of Bookstein Hall at Cal State University Northridge. We're a series of whereases that between the president and Mr. Bookstein and my own comments we've covered. So let me just read the resolution then at the bottom. It says, resolved by the Board of Trustees of the California State University that Juniper Hall of California State University Northridge be named as Bookstein Hall, May 24th, 2017. I can actually come in the back.
Okay.
And you can move it back. And then turn it down a little bit so it doesn't reflect back.
Thank you.
The second item is a facility naming request from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Vice Chancellor Garrett Ashley will present the request. Please begin, Garrett.
Thank you, Trustee Abrego. This item will consider naming the baseball clubhouse at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo as the Dignity Health Baseball Clubhouse. The proposed naming recognizes the $1.25 million contribution by Dignity Health, which will provide a substantial amount for the completion of the project. This contribution will be used for an expanded locker room, state-of-the-art athletic training and physical therapy room, lounge kitchen area, dressing room for umpires, coaches' offices, and study room. The contribution will also raise the capacity of the stadium to between 3,250 and 3,500 seats. I now turn this over to President Armstrong to say a few words.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Ashley. With the support of Dignity Health and its San Luis Obispo French Hospital, we can make a much-needed upgrade to our baseball facilities. Their help allows us to create an elevated experience for our student-athletes as well as our fans at our campus baseball stadium. The new facility set to break ground in October will have the amenities and support for our student-athletes as was just described by Vice Chancellor Ashley. Dignity Health's leadership gift launched this fully privately funded project towards success. Our Division I student-athletes will now have most of their unique needs met in one facility, allowing them to better balance the pressures of excelling on the field and in the classroom. It's part of our ongoing commitment to ensure our student-athletes are successful and able to progress toward graduation. This generous support of the clubhouse is above and beyond Dignity Health's long-term relationship as a sponsor of Cal Poly Athletics. It is my pleasure to present this naming of the Dignity Health Baseball Clubhouse.
Thank you, President Armstrong. The naming of the Dignity Health Baseball Clubhouse at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is an action item before the Committee on Institutional Advancement. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The naming of the Dignity Health Clubhouse is approved. The third item is a facility naming request from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Vice Chancellor Garrett Ashley will present the request. Please begin, Garrett.
Thank you, Trustee Abrego. This item will consider naming the Bartleson Ranch and Conservatory at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. The proposed naming recognizes the donation by Jan and Stuart Bartleson of a 450-acre avocado and lemon orchard valued at $11.3 million. This gift will enable longer-term research projects, provide internship opportunities for students, and facilitate income-producing industry partnerships for the college. I now turn this over to President Armstrong to say a few words.
Stu and Jan Bartleson's generosity marks one of the largest private land donations in the history of our university, and we intend to retain the property as a working ranch. This is a very special gift to Cal Poly as it will provide agricultural opportunities that vastly supplement what we are able to do on campus. These include longer-term research, internship opportunities, and income-producing opportunities for the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences. Stu Bartleson, who passed away earlier this year, purchased the land in 1985 and grew it into a profitable ranch in southern San Luis Obispo County. When the gift was finalized, the ranch had more than 18,000 lemon trees and nearly 9,000 avocado trees. Stu initially bought the land to build a hotel, golf course, and housing subdivision. He later decided to dedicate the land to agriculture, and he took great pride in committing the ranch to Cal Poly, where it will remain in agriculture. Neither Stu or his wife Jan are Cal Poly graduates. We're grateful that the ranch has a strong financial track record, and we expect revenues to create exciting educational opportunities on the ranch as well as on our campus. Stu served in World War II and then began a successful career as developer, including housing projects near Vandenberg Air Force Base and subdivision and shopping centers throughout the state. He and Jan were well-known philanthropists in the community, supporting numerous organizations that contribute to our quality of life. It is my honor to present this naming of the Bartleson Ranch and Conservatory.
Thank you, President Armstrong. The naming of the Bartleson Ranch and Conservatory at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is an action item before the Committee on Institutional Advancement. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The naming of the Bartleson Ranch and Conservatory is approved. The final item is an academic naming request from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Vice Chancellor Garrett Ashley will present the request. Please begin.
Thank you, Trustee Abrego. This item will consider naming the golf program at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo as the Swanson Cal Poly Golf Program. The proposed naming recognizes the $10 million endowment for the Cal Poly Golf Program by William and Cheryl Swanson. This gift will provide thousands of dollars each year in student-athlete golf scholarships with an emphasis on first-generation college students. The endowment will also provide programmatic and recruitment support for the golf program, including travel and equipment. And now turn this over to President Armstrong to say a few words.
Bill Swanson is a 1972 graduate of our industrial engineering program. He came to Cal Poly from Cuesta Community College with the assistance of a golf scholarship. He retired in 2014 from his position as CEO of Raytheon Company, where he spent more than 42 years. During Bill's tenure as CEO, sales grew 26% and its stock price increased threefold. He made considerable efforts related to corporate culture, including strong championship of diversity initiatives and a focus on corporate responsibility in the areas of STEM education and the support of the armed services. Throughout his career, he valued his time as a Cal Poly student athlete, often commenting about the lessons he learned on the golf course, including integrity. Golf, he says, is the only sport without a referee. Bill is an actively engaged volunteer on our campus and currently serves as chair of the Cal Poly Foundation. After a 25-year absence, golf returned to Cal Poly in 1999 without university support. Now, because of Bill and Cheryl Swanson, our program, which includes both men's and women's team, is nearly fully endowed. The women's team proudly won its first ever Big West Championship this year. Due to a heartfelt passion for equity in education, Bill and Cheryl have asked that a portion of their scholarships support first-generation college students. Bill and Cheryl live part-time near San Luis Obispo and take a personal interest in the success of our student athletes, in the classroom, on the course, and in their growth as future leaders. It is my pleasure to present the naming of the Swanson Cal Poly Golf Program.
Thank you, President Armstrong. The naming of the Swanson Golf Program at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is an action item before the Committee on Institutional Advancement. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion? Your turn. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The naming of the Swanson Cal Poly Golf Program is approved. Any more any more naming, President Armstrong? Chair Day, this concludes the business of the Committee on Institutional Advancement.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Abrego. Trustee Stepanek, will you please convene the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings and Grounds?
Thank you, Chair Day. Will the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings and Grounds please come to order? We will now hear public comment from those who signed up to address agenda items coming before the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings and Grounds today. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Our 3 speakers are Mark Nelson, Josh Boucher, and Hector Fernandez. Would you please come to the mic? Are any of those 3 people here at this time? Not seeing them at this time, we will move on. It's time for the committee to consider today's consent agenda. Would any committee member wish to remove any of the items for separate discussion? Not hearing any, may I have a motion to approve all the items listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The items listed on the consent agenda are approved. We have several discussion items today. Item number 5 is an action item, replacement space for residential life programs and conference center for San Diego State University. This item will be presented by Steve Reyes, Executive Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, Elliot Hirschman, President of San Diego State University, and Vi San Juan, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Capital Planning, Design, and Construction.
Thank you, Chair Stepanek. This item requests that the board approve refinement to the campus physical master plan, amend the 2016-2017 capital outlay program, and approve schematic plans for the replacement space for San Diego State's residential life programs and conference center. The project aims to improve the student residential life program facilities as well as provide a much-needed replacement for the nearby student conference center. President Hirschman will introduce the item. President Hirschman.
Thank you. San Diego State's residence halls have approximately $500 million in deferred maintenance. To address the deterioration of our residence halls, we've adopted a multi-year construction and financing plan. As part of this plan, the current item proposes the construction of 2 small buildings to replace student gathering and programming spaces. In addition to updating our space for gathering and programming, this construction will improve security by separating some of the gathering spaces from the residence hall. This change will also facilitate conference rentals by outside groups, which help reduce student housing costs. And last, as a number have raised this, the footprint can't be used for an alternative residence hall because it's simply too small. So thank you for your support of this item.
Thank you, President Hirschman. This slide shows the area of master plan refinement. For orientation, the top of the slide is north. Montezuma Road is to the south of the site. And this is the east housing area. So a number of these buildings are existing residence halls. And the tallest, I believe, are Zura Hall at 9 stories, 8 effectively occupied, and then 91 is Tenochca Hall. And so this is under renovation, and Zura Hall was recently renovated. The Tula Tenochca Community Center has been around for more than 25 years. It's here in below this red footprint, and it's primarily used for meeting space for the housing program. Roughly 95% of the time it's used for housing meetings, and of the remaining 5%, 4% is used for campus meetings for orientation and graduation, and 1% for summer session and outside use. So it is well called a conference center primarily for housing meetings and housing operations. Next slide. This site plan better depicts the student housing complex in the southeast area of campus. The outlined in purple is the proposed site for the new Tula Conference Center. And one of the constraints is, as President Hirschman mentioned, is a constrained site. There are fire roads required both to the north and the west and the south of the site. So it even decreases further the amount of land that you can construct on. At the bottom of the slide, outlined in red, is the site of the Tenochca Community Space. It will provide a new entry lobby and security desk for the Tenochca Hall, which is shown just to the right of the red outline. The community space is designed to create indoor and outdoor rooms for student lounges that include a mailroom, kitchen, TV area, and a transition space to the existing outdoor pool, which is to the left of the red outline. This is a rendering of the two-story Tula Conference Center. It will have commission-style elements, including exterior arcades, pitch tile roofs, and a white stucco exterior. The new conference center will also have a double-height meeting space with wood beams that will carry the architectural theme into the courtyard. Sustainable design features include exterior circulation, use of recycled and regional materials, optimizing energy performance, and enhancing lighting controls. The Tenochca community space will have expansive glass walls with large openings to allow the interior and exterior space to flow together. The project will significantly improve accessibility by providing a pathway to address the grade differential between the building entry and the pool level. The architecture will be simple and modern to blend with the existing Tenochca and Zura residence halls. As this is a replacement of an existing structure and located on less than 5 acres surrounded by urban use, a categorical exemption has been prepared in conformance with the California Environmental Quality Act. The project cost is $23 million and proposed to be funded with CSU system-wide revenue bonds and designated housing reserves. The Committee on Finance will consider approval of financing at this meeting. Overall, the Tula Tenochca replacement project will greatly improve the residents' life environment, community experience, and in turn, student success at San Diego State University. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion, any questions?
This is actually a question about the financing, but I think it's probably appropriate to ask it here. Could we please have an explanation of why it's appropriate to use housing funds for these facilities?
They are in support of the housing program. The Tenochca community space will be student lounge space for the residents in that area. There's very little student life area now, and really with the number of students living on campus, housing is contributing toward that space. So there's mail rooms for the students, lounges for the students, and the community center is primarily used for housing programs and meetings 95% of the time.
Do you know how much outside use of the conference center is likely to be made? I mean, outside the campus, I mean, outside groups off the campus?
I think President Hirschman has probably a pretty good idea on the outside usage.
Sure. Right now it's minimal, but to the extent that there is additional use in the future, then those outside uses would actually reimburse the housing program, reducing student costs. So we can't really tell. Obviously, it's going to be a much nicer facility, so to the extent that there is outside interest, that will certainly benefit students and reduce their costs.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes.
The use of SRBs for the financing, I assume or understand, does that mean that the users will be paying for the cost of it eventually?
It's paid back through the student housing fees.
That's correct. One thing that President Hirschman mentioned about the outside usage is actually very common among housing and related facilities, both on all CSU campuses, all UC campuses, and generally public universities. It's really a great way of keeping the costs down to the students, because oftentimes, particularly depending on the location of the campus and what other facilities are available in the outside community, this could be offsetting revenue to lower costs, so that when the students are paying for housing, they're actually being somewhat subsidized by these outside entities who will pay when they're not needing that space. So it's really, I think, a really good way of optimizing the use of the space and keeping the student costs down.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Vi, Elliot, and Steve for the presentation. The item titled Replacement Space for Residential Life Programs and Conference Center at San Diego State University is an action item before the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings, and Grounds. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstention? The item titled Replacement Space for Residential Life Programs and Conference Center for San Diego State University is approved. Item 6 is an action item regarding the replacement and expansion of the Equine Center for California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo. This item will be presented by Steve Rayleigh, Jeff Armstrong, the president of Cal Poly SLO, and also Vi Senwan. Steve?
Thank you, Chair Stepanek. This item requests that the board approve a refinement to the campus physical master plan, amend the 2016-2017 capital outlay program, and approve schematic plans for the Equine Center Phase 1 project at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. The master plan refinement will allow for better planning of near and long-term projects, and the equine facility project will provide necessary upgrades to a world-class equine science program, allowing it to expand, grow, and flourish, and at the same time fulfill the university's philosophy of learn by doing. I will now hand the presentation over to President Armstrong to introduce this item. President Armstrong?
Thank you, Steve. Horses have been an integral part of Cal Poly and its learn by doing approach from the university's earliest years. In 1903, the horse unit was developed to breed and care for the draft horses used on the farm. With the advent of tractors in the 1940s, Percheron and Clydesdale horses were phased out and Cal Poly began to focus on thoroughbreds. Costing a little over $7 million in 1940, a new stallion barn, mare barn, and paddock were built to support the new program. Many of the thoroughbred horses from this program have done well on the racetrack, such as a 2008 filly who has won more than 100,000 in competitions. The quarter horse program was started in 1955 and continues today. The students in the program are actively involved in all aspects of the breeding and care of the horses and are currently doing this work in the same barns that were built in 1940. Through the generous gift from the Oppenheimer family, Cal Poly is undertaking the replacement of the stallion barn, mare barn, and providing a cover over 2 riding arenas. As the science of horse breeding and care has progressed, the existing facilities have not kept pace with these advances. The new mare barn and stallion barn will provide a safer environment for the animals, students, faculty, staff, and visitors. Furthermore, the covered arena will allow for classes to continue year-round, providing every student in equine studies with ongoing learn-by-doing opportunities. The new $9.66 million facility will allow our students, faculty, and staff to continue Cal Poly's world-class horse operation into the next 100 years. Thank you for your consideration, and I'll turn the presentation over to Vi.
Thank you, President Armstrong. This is the proposed master plan for Cal Poly San Luis Obispo that focuses on land use refinements in support of the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Science. Each of the 4 colors present a different phase of the proposed development plan. In green are upgrades to an existing equestrian arena. In blue is the addition of a second equestrian arena. In yellow is a new plant science facility that will consolidate various science functions into one building. And in red is the proposed agricultural pavilion. In addition to the proposed master plan changes described above, today's item seeks approval of the first project, the Equine Center Phase 1, and its schematic design. Phase 1 of the Equine Center project, which is shown in top in green, includes upgrades to an existing equestrian arena and replacement of older barn and storage units. The subsequent facilities that are blue, yellow, and red will be brought to the board at a later date when those projects have secured funding. This is a closer view of the Equine Center Phase 1 site plan based on the proposed schematic design. The project will expand the existing hay storage barn, which is the smaller green square at the top of the slide. It'll construct a cover over the existing equestrian arena shown as a larger rectangular structure, construct a replacement stallion barn just south of the arena, and construct a replacement foaling barn at the southern end of the site. These are photos of the existing sites. The top is an existing air equestrian arena, a riding pen, and hay barn. The middle is the existing stallion barn, and the bottom is the existing mare barn. This is a view of the Equine Center. The project will construct a metal structured covering over the equestrian arena and will include an upgraded seating and viewing area. There will be 6 new riding pens and a 2,000 square foot expansion to hay barn for additional storage and accessible restrooms. The larger arena will accommodate the use by more students and enable it to be used during poor weather conditions. This is the Stallion Barn, and shown here, which will be made of concrete block and have standing seam metal roofs. Sustainable features include water-saving features, LED lighting, and a low-impact stormwater system. The total project cost of $9.6 million will be funded by a donation from the Oppenheimer family. Staff recommends approval. I'll turn it over to Executive Vice Chancellor Relier for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Vi. Today's item helps ensure that our world-class programs, taught by outstanding faculty and supported by dedicated staff, have the world-class facilities to match. This project will support applied research and hands-on student learning to ensure academic and lifelong success. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? The item titled Replacement and Expansion of the Equine Center for California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo is an action item before the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings, and Grounds. Only committee members may vote on that at this particular time. May I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item titled Replacement Expansion of the Equine Center at California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo is approved. Item number 7 is an action item. The Holloway Avenue revitalization, replacement of student housing, and mixed use and creative arts for San Francisco State University. This item will be presented by Steve Relier, Les Wong, the president of San Francisco State, and by San Juan. Steve?
Thank you, Chair Stepanek. This action item requests approval of a master plan refinement to adjust facility footprints to support the revitalization of San Francisco State University's Holloway Avenue. In addition, this item requests schematic design approval of 2 projects that will contribute to that transformation: the Student Housing Mixed-Use Public-Private Partnership Project and the Creative Arts Replacement Building. These 2 projects will help ensure that San Francisco State continues to meet the academic, housing, and service needs of its students and the campus community. I will now hand the presentation over to President Wong, who will introduce the project. President Wong?
Thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor Relier. I am delighted to join my colleagues from San Francisco State University to convey our excitement for an innovative project which will take an underutilized acre of low-density housing through a public-private partnership and transform it into a high-density mixed-use residential project at a key campus entry point. Since receiving conceptual approval from the Board of Trustees in 2014, we have worked to refine the project, select our prospective development partners, set out the framework for our partnership, and taken the steps to ensure that it will fulfill our goals. The project will provide over 500 undergraduate students with affordable housing, which will help us address the significant demand we face. And it will do so in a manner that will allow residents to minimize reliance on private automobiles, thereby furthering the university's commitment to sustainability. The Holloway Revitalization Project will serve as the first step in transforming Holloway Avenue into a vibrant campus main street. It will create an attractive public entrance for the campus, and it will develop additional retail and commercial spaces to meet demand. I am very pleased with what we have been able to craft, a project that will meet our needs and fulfill key components of our strategic plan. Most importantly, though, it will allow us to offer housing to over 500 students, thereby improving the likelihood that they will complete their coursework and earn a degree, all while being part of a vibrant campus community. The Creative Arts Replacement Building is a major step in improving our campus facilities and resources to support teaching, scholarship, students, and faculty. The new building will primarily serve students and faculty in the Department of Broadcast and Electronic Communication Arts. Becca graduates work in media organizations in the Bay Area and around the world, and include some of the top names in broadcast journalism, entertainment television, radio, and audio and video production. The building will also provide interdisciplinary lecture and active learning classrooms for students throughout the campus. This new building will provide much-needed informal social space where all students can gather and exchange ideas outside the classroom. Finally, the new building will bring together the currently dispersed administrative offices of the College of Liberal and Creative Arts, the largest of our colleges, in one unified space. As part of the long-term replacement of the existing Creative Arts building, we are considering building a donor-funded Center for Arts and Media on the western portion of the project site. With recording and broadcast capabilities, it would provide hands-on learning for Becca students and support university and community programs such as musical performances and lectures. The new Creative Arts building marks a turning point in the transformation of the campus. As the first new academic building to be constructed in over 20 years, it will provide vital new space for the Becca program, the college, and the campus, and we are truly grateful to the Chancellor's Office for your support. And I will turn it over to Vi San Juan to present the item. Vi.
Thank you, President Wong. This is the existing physical master plan for San Francisco State University. The campus is comprised of 144 acres. That acreage includes the acquisition of a portion of the neighboring Park Merced residential development that occurred between 2000 and 2005. The acquisition took effect. And that's located along the campus's southern border, and that's referenced in the CEQA documents. The first action requested is the board's approval of the changes to the master plan. The campus is proposing refinements to its comprehensive master plan update that was approved by the board in 2007 and most recently modified in 2014. The proposed changes focus on the southern area of the campus to modify the location of the proposed housing along Holloway Avenue. And that's outlined as University Parks South housing. And the area outlined in green that is on Font Boulevard, which is the location of the Creative Arts Replacement Buildings Complex. The change in the proposed student housing is to shift the new student housing and mixed-use development to the east, so it borders along 19th Avenue. This will provide an improved gateway to the campus, and the change to the Creative Arts Complex is essentially to change the location of two future buildings to improve adjacencies and reflect the actual footprint of the first building of the complex. This is the proposed physical master plan for San Francisco. The new location for the student housing mixed-use project is shown in purple. The proposed location will improve the transition from the neighborhood to the university and improve access to transit. It will also establish the entrance to the new College Main Street for Holloway Avenue. The master plan also shows a shift toward 19th Avenue for the future University Park South housing mixed-use project. Of the four Creative Arts replacement buildings, the master plan change is to improve adjacencies so the future auditorium, which is number 109, also pointed out as Block 1, will be located closer to the Creative Arts Replacement Building containing the Broadcast and Electronic Communication Arts Building, which is BECA. The location of the new Creative Arts Academic Building that you will see is today's schematic design is shaded in green. The School of Dance, building number 107, at the very top left of the slide, will be located adjacent to the theater and dance buildings. So essentially, building 107 and 109 is flipping. The campus prepared a focused, tiered final environmental impact report that will built upon the environmental analysis completed for the 2007 master plan. The final environmental impact report found a new significant cumulative impact to historic resources related to the proposed demolition of buildings that are part of the Park Merced Remnant Historic District. The FEIR also indicated the project would contribute to the significant construction noise impact that was previously identified in the 2007 Master Plan EIR. The resolution before the board includes the affirmation of the findings of fact and the statement of overriding considerations that were adopted as part of the 2007 EIR, and adopts the new findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations that the project benefits outweigh the new significant unavoidable impact in the demolition of historic resources, which are part of the Park Merced Remnant Historic District. In order to mitigate the demolition of historic resources, San Francisco State University's mitigation monitoring plan includes documenting the existing buildings and original design drawings through photographs and video. The campus will provide this archive to the San Francisco Public Library, the Northwest Information Center of the California Historical Resources Information System, and will also maintain its own documentation archive. In addition to the master plan approval, there are schematic designs for two projects for the board's consideration. First, we'll review the schematic design for the Holloway Revitalization Student Housing Mixed-Use Project. This is currently the student housing that was once part of Park Merced, an apartment community to the south of campus, which would be to the left of the slide. And this site, which is a low-rise, low-density housing with interior courtyards, will be demolished as part of this project. In this picture, Holloway Avenue is to the right. Also in this picture, still to the right. In the view of the proposed Holloway redevelopment project from the same vantage point, the project design will create below-grade parking, retail on the ground and second floors, and residential spaces on the upper floors. This view shows the entrance from both Varela Avenue on the left and the second floor courtyard, and Holloway Avenue on the right at the ground floor. The project will provide 516 beds, 50 below-grade parking spaces, lounge and study spaces, retail, and accessible pathway to accommodate the grades change. The building is being designed to achieve LEED Platinum certification and includes reduced stormwater runoff, high-performance glazing, and rooftop solar energy generation. An alternative is being considered by the campus and the developer to increase retail space by adding a below-grade parking level. The alternative is estimated at $5 million for about 25,000 gross square feet and an additional 12 parking spaces, and your resolution notes that potential alternative. A total project cost of $102.1 million will be financed by a private developer, as described in item 4 of today's Committee on Finance. Now we'll review the schematic design for the Creative Arts Replacement Building. This is the existing site. This is also currently student housing that will be demolished as part of this project. The existing Creative Arts Building can be seen in the distance. As an aside, with the demolition of the two areas of existing student housing, there will be a net increase of 321 beds resulting from the student housing mixed-use project. In this view of the proposed Creative Arts Replacement Building, the project shows the west, shows from the west with shade structure shielding interior spaces from direct sunlight. Building entrances are oriented to the main campus and to the future auditorium. This project is also being designed to achieve a LEED Platinum certification by using a mix of natural and mechanical ventilation, stormwater retention, use of daylighting, and solar-ready rooftop. The building will house the Broadcast and Electronic Communication Arts Department, providing television studios and a production environment for teaching, recording, and editing. The building will also contain lecture space and offices for the College of Liberal and Creative Arts. The total project cost of $1.1 million will be financed from system-wide revenue bonds and CSU designated reserves. Campus staff recommends approval of these two projects and the related master plan refinements. I'll back to Steve for closing thoughts.
Thank you, Vi. As San Francisco State continues to evolve and grow, this student housing and mixed-use partnership is an opportunity to leverage the university's resources to best address the needs of students and the community and reduce financial impacts for the CSU by providing private funding. In addition, replacement of the Creative Arts Building will provide contemporary facilities for this important academic program. Approval of this item today will provide cost-effective and much-needed upper division housing, retail, and food service space through the revitalization of the Holloway Building and allow the campus to expand critically needed academic space at the same time. The Committee on Finance will consider the final partnership development agreement later today in the agenda. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yes. Trustee, what's a solar-ready rooftop?
It's structurally ready for solar to be added, so we'll be going for potentially private dollars in the future to add solar.
Thank you. Yes. Trustee Day.
I just had a quick question. On page 8 and 9, it references the 2007 EIR on the historical resources. It said it contemplates the ultimate demolition of the entire area, but yet then it also says that the EIR did not contemplate impact to historical districts. I'm just curious to understand the distinction there.
I'm sorry, could you point that out on page 8 and 9?
Top of page 9. It said that in 2007 it did contemplate the ultimate destruction of all the quote-unquote eligible historic buildings, but then it says that the EIR did not analyze those. I'm just wondering, why was the EIR in 2007, why it did not analyze that, unless I'm misreading that.
Yeah, I'm trying to hear your question and recall back to 2007 and contemplate this proposed project. It is demolishing one more block of low-rise that wasn't demolished in the 2007 plan. So it may not have been historic. And if Tom Lolini knows, I'll call on Tom. He's the Senior Assistant Vice President from San Francisco State University.
Can you hear me? The 2007 plan, while it anticipated demolition, did not necessarily assess the historical effects of that. And subsequent to 2007, in 2011, the city of San Francisco approved significant demolition of the remainder of the Park Merced two-story townhouses. And they, in that environmental review, had a finding of historical impact significance. And so we felt that in order to be consistent with other findings that happened subsequent to the 2007 plan, we should update our plan accordingly.
Thank you, Tom.
Jane?
I would just like to say that it was my pleasure to see these sites at a recent visit to San Francisco State, and I think these proposals are marvelous. They're going to add a lot to the campus.
Thank you. Thank you, Les and Steve, for the presentation. The item titled Holloway Avenue Revitalization, Replacement of Student Housing, Mixed Use, and Creative Arts for San Francisco State University is an action item before the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings, and Grounds. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The item titled Holloway Avenue Revitalization, Replacement of Student Housing, Mixed Use, and Creative Arts for San Francisco State University is approved. Item 8 is action item regarding the North Campus enhancements and soccer training facility for California State University, Los Angeles. This item will be presented by Steve Rayleigh, William Covino, the president of California State University, Los Angeles, and also Vice San Juan.
Thank you, Chair Stepanek. Today's proposed revision of Cal State LA's master plan will allow for the campus, which is centered in a dense urban location with limited available land for outward expansion, to continue to meet the needs of its students, faculty, staff, and community. The proposed master plan revision will allow for new student parking facilities to ease current parking challenges, which often require the use of off-site venues, and new student housing and dining, meaning that students can spend more time on campus and in turn improve student success. And it will include a new public-private partnership opportunity with the newest Major League Soccer team, the LA Football Club, or LAFC, to improve the north end of the campus through the construction of a state-of-the-art, privately funded soccer training facility. This item requests board approval of the campus physical master plan, amendment of the 2016-2017 capital outlay program, and approval of schematic plans for the Los Angeles Football Club Training Center. I will now hand the presentation over to President Covino, who will introduce the item. President Covino.
Thank you. As you've heard, we're entering into a new partnership with the Los Angeles Football Club, Los Angeles' newest Major League Soccer team. They will be investing in Cal State LA by locating their performance center practice facility at the university. In addition to providing the full cost of the facility, the LAFC will provide the full cost for the maintenance of athletic fields on the campus. Additionally, they have generously agreed to provide $1.5 million to Cal State LA to be devoted to athletic and recreational facilities enhancement. Having a professional sports team at Cal State LA with an ownership group comprising lead in multiple industries will also yield direct academic benefits to the students, including student internships with the organization, including with ownership group members and leaders, LAFC participation in a new sports and athletic management program currently being developed by Cal State LA, and clinical and practicum hours for nursing and kinesiology students at the team's performance center. So fundamentally, the public-private partnership will enable Cal State LA to turn mostly idle and vacant space on our campus into a site for numerous educational opportunities. It will beautify Cal State LA by additionally beautify Cal State LA by creating much needed green space and athletic areas for students, create a great deal of excitement on campus, connecting us to partners with a commitment to students and communities in Los Angeles. And these benefits, we are certain, will multiply over time. So we're very excited and happy about this project, and I'll now turn it over to Vice San Juan to present the item.
Thank you, President Covino. This is the proposed physical master plan for California State University, Los Angeles. The campus is bordered by Interstate 10 to the south, Interstate 710 on the east, and single and multi-family housing on the north and west sides. The master plan revisions focus on the north campus area to increase on-campus housing and provide increased parking, outdoor fields, and the soccer training facility. The location for the new approximately 1,650 space parking garage E is shown in red, just located north of the existing parking structure C, and the site is currently surface parking. The location for the Los Angeles Football Club training facility is shown in gold, located next to the existing student housing, and this site is currently a recreation field. The location for the south fields is just below the LAFC training facility and shown in gray. And the location for student housing and dining, which is shown in a teal color, is on the east side of the campus, sitting at a lower elevation in the academic core to the west. The site is also currently surface parking, in which the display spaces will be included in parking structure E. The net increase in parking, assuming the development of all proposed sites, is 100 spaces. The campus completed a final environmental impact report to assess the impacts of the project. The FEIR found that all but one impact related to reduced air quality during the project construction could be mitigated to be less than significant. The board resolution contains the adoption of the findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations that recognize the project's benefits to the university and certifies the EIR as complete for the North Campus enhancements. The board item also seeks approval of the proposed Los Angeles Football Club Training Center project and the schematic design of the proposed 25,000 square foot facility. This is the site plan for the proposed LAFC training facility located on Paseo Rancho Castilla on the northern end of the campus. It will consist of the training center building, which is shaded in blue, and a practice field, of course, in green, and a parking lot. The main entrance is on the west side of the building, accessed from the parking lot, and the building program is oriented to the practice field. A single-family home neighborhood sits to the north of the project with the campus boundary shown as a dashed line on this slide. This is the existing site looking northwest from Paseo Rancho Castilla. The site is currently used as a multi-purpose recreation field. The topography varies and the elevation drops on the northern and eastern edges of the site. This is View of the proposed LA Football Club training facility. The project will improve the use of the existing slope site by adding retaining walls and leveling the site. The view highlights the intent for a very transparent building with a training area, warming kitchen, and dining room on the first floor, all readily accessible from the practice field. The second floor will house conference rooms and coaching and staff office space. The total project cost of $6 million will be funded by the Los Angeles Football Club, as described in item 3 of today's Committee on Finance. Staff recommends approval. I'll turn it back to Steve.
Thank you, Vi. As you can see, Cal State LA's proposed master plan revision and the utilization of a campus-centric partnership with the LA Football Club will allow the campus to expand its footprint, continue to provide much-needed services, facilities, and campus life improvements for students, faculty, and staff, and most importantly, ensure that the campus is best equipped to meet the needs of the campus community in the years and decades to come. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Other? Yes, Trustee Taylor.
No, I'm willing to move the item.
Oh,
Chair.
okay. You're a little ahead. First of all, thank all the presenters for the presentation. The item titled North Campus Enhancements and Soccer Training Facility, California State University, Los Angeles, is an action item for the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings and Grounds. Only committee members may vote at this time. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Any additional discussion?
Trustee Abrego had a question.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
I'm curious to know if the students intramural sport will have access to the facility, to the field, and also whether or not the Cal State LA will be part of the scheduling decision, scheduling the entities that are going to be using the facility.
Yes to both questions.
Any additional discussion? Not seeing. We'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item titled North Campus Enhancements and Soccer Training Facility for California State University, Los Angeles is approved. At the time that this particular committee came to order, we had an opportunity to have some people give us public comment, but sadly none of those people were present at the time. I understand that some of them may now have arrived. So I'm going to request once again if Mark Nelson, Josh Bourgeois, or Hector Fernandez happen to be here. Are any of those three people here? If you would like to have, you can have 3 minutes each if you wish to come to the mic.
All right. This is good, right? That's where I'm supposed to be? I just want to make sure. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Bourgeois. I'm with Golden State Environmental Justice Alliance, and we sent in a comment letter regarding this project. Now, I am a little confused as to the way you guys run things here, but as this, is my first meeting in attendance. So I was informed that the meeting was at 1:15, and I was here about 12:50. 12:45-ish, and you guys were already on like item number 6. So clearly, as you guys have already voted, what I said isn't going to sway or change anything. But I will just be up here and simply state that we stand by our comment letter that we provided, and we believe that the environmental impact report is flawed and should be redrafted and recirculated. And with that, I will cede the rest of my 3 minutes. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, trustees, presidents, everybody. I'm Hector Fernandez with SETC. Just wanted to take a moment, was reviewing kind of a lot of plans that were going on, and I've seen them go on over the last 8 months in my 11 years with the CSU. And, it's great that we're expanding. It's great that we're taking care of the university and looking at a lot of new buildings. When I viewed a lot of them, I do have kind of questions on some of the cost related to it. We tend to seem to have the common thread of the construction costs are a little bit higher. The construction costs are a little bit higher, and they tend to keep creeping a little bit higher and a little bit higher. And I really kind of wonder, are we really using our money wisely and the resources to actually minimize these costs when we're doing these projects? Because they seem to go up and up and up, yet, I think the quality overall tends to kind of go down, down, and down. And I say that because, you know, we do represent the trades workers within the CSU who maintain these buildings. And unfortunately, that's kind of what I wanted to address also is as this trend kind of move forward and we start to see a lot of the triple P to enter the scene, a lot of the work tends to go to the auxiliaries and really taken out of the hands of the presidents of the CSU and really being put into an auxiliary that, in most people's opinion, don't really have a loyalty to the university. You know, they're there to service the university, but I think the pride of ownership that our members and workers put in every single day on these campuses tends to fall short when you start to go into a lot more of the auxiliaries, and we are starting to see that on some of these campuses where I know San Marcos, for an example, has pulled back one of the campuses under facilities because there has been some questions on where the building has gone in a short amount of time. So in short, you know, I just want to kind of bring to the attention that I think we do really need to look at really the costs that are associated with these contracts, and then also realize, you know, the preventative maintenance after the fact. We really should start looking at how we can work better together to make sure that we try to keep that work in-house and make sure that we have the proper people taking care of these campuses that actually have a pride of ownership and will put that campus first and foremost. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Trustee Day, that concludes the business of the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings, and Grounds.
Thank you, Trustee Stepanek. Trustee Taylor, will you please convene the Committee on Finance?
Thank you, Chair Day. Will the Committee on Finance please come to order? Before we begin, we will hear public comment from those signed up to address the various agenda items coming before the Committee on Finance today. We have 19 speakers today, and so every speaker will be allotted 1.5 minutes, a minute and a half to address the board, and I'll call them up in groups of 3. Will the following group please make your way to the microphone? Pat Gant, Loretta Sava-Etasi, Carolyn Duckett, Sergio Roldan, Tessie Reese, and Mike Chavez.
Good afternoon, Chair Day, trustees, campus presidents, brothers and sisters in the audience, and guests. I'm Pat Gant, president of the California State University Employees Union, and I'm speaking today at the Finance Committee mainly because we are in bargaining and compensation, but also because we did not have a collective bargaining meeting in open session that I could address. Even though almost every union is in some bargaining status on a reopener or a full contract with the CSU, somehow it was decided not to have an open session of collective bargaining. So I am here along with my bargaining team to talk on things, and it's all about compensation, of course, and the financial things we need to talk about at bargaining table. And we will the following speakers will be delivering petitions for our members of concern about our compensation system, our bargaining, and otherwise. So I'd also be remiss that on the finance and going into governmental affairs, that we do have an opportunity still to secure more funding for the CSU, hopefully in this budget year in the long run. I continue to work in Sacramento on behalf of the CSU and everyone in this room to secure more funding, and we will work on that no matter what. That commitment from me, but we also have to understand that it makes it very difficult when we do not see the results at the bargaining table and basically moving forward on issues of common interest and that we've expressed consistently. We hope to have a next meeting. We hope to have much more progress than we do today, and the following speakers will highlight some of the issues on the table of interest, concern, and we must have addressed. Thank you for the time.
Good afternoon. My name is Loretta Seva-Itasi. I want to speak today about compensation, as Pat said. It's always an elephant in the room. The reason why I want to speak about it is because I got an email from our Human Resources Department yesterday telling me that according to their records, I have 25 plus years of service, and I've been invited to a breakfast. But having been a long-term employee and having gone through a lot of bad budget cycles where I didn't get a raise for 5 years, 6 years, and then ended up applying for a higher level position in order to make more money, then got reclassified and have been in that same classification for 20 years now. The CSU has said that they want to be an employer of choice. So if you want to be an employer of choice, you really need to consider how you're compensating your employees and that making sure that you're keeping up. I know you can't keep up with the market salary rates in all classifications, but you have to make some sort of attempt. I do want to acknowledge one campus. I did read an email that went out to staff at CSU Chico, where they are trying to rectify that by giving increases to employees based on years of service. And not only that, but they're also trying to address the inversion, the issue of inversion as well. And I think that that's how you can do it, is little bit at a time, and each campus try and make a concerted effort to do so. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. The Chancellor White, Board of Trustees, campus presidents, distinguished guests, and visitors. My name is Carolyn Duckett, and I am the chair for Unit 7, and I have been employed here at the Chancellor's office for 22 years. As chief steward of my campus and chair, I had the opportunity to meet and speak with many of our represented employees, and their concerns are, of course, salary and promotional opportunities. I want to mention that during the year of furloughs, many employees have not recovered and are still having a difficult time supporting their families. Many have taken on second jobs to support their families, and many are barely just getting by. No CSU employee should have to work 2 jobs in order to support their families. Another issue is a career advancement or salary progression, and this is true for bargaining units 7 and 5. In particular, as our members gain experience and excel in their duties and responsibilities, they should be rewarded by moving up through the salary ranges, and this is not happening. We are asking you, Chancellor White and Board of Trustees, to take care of the exceptional people who work here and throughout the California State University system by allowing us to progress and support our reasonable requests to end the career and stagnation and reinstate salary steps and salary progression. Thank you. I'm sorry. I have petitions that I need to present to Chancellor White.
Good afternoon, Board of Trustees. My name is Sergio Roldan, statewide Vice Chair for Unit 5 CSUE. I'm from the San Bernardino campus, where I've been employed for 25 years. I have petitions here that I would like to present to Chancellor White. At the start of bargaining, we presented a preamble to the CSU. It expressed our commitment to good faith negotiations rooted in respect and guided by a code of ethics, principles, and moral values. The CSU summarily rejected the preamble, thereby setting the tenor for bargaining sessions, as well as revealing the CSU's attitude towards the thousands of dedicated and hardworking staff who are the backbone of the CSU. Without them, whole campuses could not advance their core missions. Thank you.
I also have petitions for Chancellor White. My speech is going to be a little bit different this afternoon. And my name is Tessie Reese. I'm the Unit 2 Chair from San Diego State. My response basically is there was an article in the Union Tribune dated on May 8th. And the name of that article was After SDSU Fees Went Up, Health Staffing Went Down. My response, because staff was very upset about that article. And so I'm going to read my letter to the UT. Whether they put it in the paper or not, or make a response to me or not, I felt I needed to read this to you, Board of Trustees and Chancellor White, in reference to that article. In reference to your article, after SDSU fees went up, health staffing down May 8th of 2017. Gripes persist after SDSU's health services. You were correct that SDSU has increased student health services fee at the same time that they reduced the student health services staffing by 40%, resulting in decreased healthcare access for our students. As a state audit has recently reported, management positions and salaries continue to increase, while staff continue to be paid at the lowest levels allowed in their job classifications. As SDSU verified, Student Affairs is diverting the student health fees and health facilities fees to fund other departments instead of our health care. Thank you for exposing this information to the public. In spite of the dramatic cuts, our employees continue to provide high-quality medical care to our students in a caring environment. Unfortunately, it's become a commonplace to refer our students to outside healthcare facilities because of insufficient SDSU student health services staff. The cases that were in your articles were reviewed, the correct information was given, and as we work together to provide more complete information to encourage appropriate follow-up care. I've been working in the health center since 1997, and as a union steward, I'm the chair of Unit 2. We bargain over 4 units, over 15,000 folks under CSUEU. The dedicated employees who work at Student Health Services strive to provide the best quality care possible to thousands of the students who visit our center each semester, and we do so with a smile and compassion. Our students' welfare and well-being is our top priority. I'm almost done. The majority of our employees who work in the health center bring an average of at least 15 years, some more than 20. And many of us, and we do this because we love our students and we love our future leaders of California. We will continue to provide the excellent care to our students in spite of the decrease in funding and challenges that were included in your article. I received a response back from the writer, Mr. Jeff McDonald, who appreciated my letter, doesn't have the or the ability to post this, but hopefully UT will do something about it. So that's my speech. Thank you.
Hello. I too also have petitions for the Chancellor and the Board of Trustees. Thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Chavez, and I am the CSU statewide Unit 5 representative from Stanislaus State. I'm here to talk about issues that I have a hard time believing in, that the CSU's bargaining team didn't believe in. I'm talking about the preamble that we, the CSU, has proposed to the CSU bargaining team, which it outright rejected. I'll give a couple of the first paragraphs, since I only have a minute and a half. It says, whereas the CSU seeks to be a premier workplace of choice that provides opportunities for our members to develop intellectually, personally, and professionally, the CSU recognizes that bargaining unit members provide critical public services that enrich the university and its communities. Whereas the CSU-EU seeks harmonious and cooperative labor relations and a strong university workforce where all members of the campus community are respected and valued. CSU's bargaining team outright rejected this. That's the tone that the CSU bargaining team has initiated in our bargaining sessions. I believe we have taken the high road and have principles and values that all I had hoped could agree to. I'm talking about the historically continued outsourcing of Unit 5 work at such campuses such as Monterey Bay, San Marcos, Dominguez Hills, and here at the Chancellor's office, and others, or the bullying and harassment at campuses such as Sacramento, Stanislaus, East Bay, and others. We, the CSU, demand that the CSU hear us, respect us, and more importantly, value us. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to our second group of speakers today. Pam Robertson, Rich McGee, Rosa Jones, Ricardo Uch, Rocky Sanchez, and Neil Jacklin. In any particular order, please.
Good afternoon, Chancellor White, Board of Trustees, and campus chapter presidents and campus presidents. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Pam Robertson. I'm the Unit 2 Vice Chair from Sacramento State University. I've been employed for 29 years, and I've seen good times and bad times. I too have petitions that I'd like to present. And this is representative people who believe in this. They believe in those principles. And those guiding principles are basic. They're very basic. They're not outrageous. We're not asking for a whole lot. We're asking for what we should truly believe ourselves anyway. I was pretty surprised that it wasn't embraced immediately. My question is why?
Good
Good afternoon, Chancellor White, trustees, campus president, and President Armstrong. I am from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I am Jones, a 27-year employee, and I have some petitions which represent the basic right that should be granted to all employees. Nevertheless, they were rejected by the CSU. Now that we have a May revise and it has been released, we are going into our 8th week of bargaining, and we are hoping and looking forward to transparency, fairness, and good faith bargaining. CSUEU has provided many employee experiences, perspectives that justify a solid contract that we can all be proud of. Let's do what we do best, and let's get to work.
Good afternoon. My name is Ricardo Uch. I am Vice Chair, Unit 9, Technical Support. I'm here with my bargaining team to stand strong. Why are we doing this? Why did our preamble was rejected? We're fighting to keep our jobs. We're fighting for equality. What we want to prevent with these preambles, with our contract, we want to prevent the creation of McJobs, which is what it's turning out to be. After 33 years of faithful service to the CSU, I would like to continue to see the CSU as a premier employer. I'm bringing signatures along with my team. We are hard workers. As I visit the other campuses, it is very obvious that we are maintaining industry standards, best practices in our particular jobs. We're very proud employees. I speak with them. I have met many of your IT employees here on this building and on other campuses, and I'm here to, on behalf of them, stand up and say, we want a fair share, we want a better contract, we want to keep our benefits. Again, I'm going to tell you, I do not want to see our jobs turning into McJobs. We're not that way. We're proud. And we'll stand here and we'll show up again and again and again with the same message. Thank you.
Rich McGee, Chair, Bargaining Unit 9. I too have some petitions for Chancellor White. I come here today to address, for the first time in 26 years, a particular campus president. Dr. Sakaki, Sonoma State, CSUE was notified a few weeks ago that you intend to have your campus outsource 4 police dispatchers and have their work performed by the town of Cotati. Cotati is a small town located about 3.5 miles from Sonoma State. It features 6,000 really nice people. My wife is from Cotati. It's a beautiful place to vacation and a nice accordion festival. Sonoma State has 8,700 students. It makes little sense to have the dispatch needs of 8,700 students plus the jobs of 4 professional certified, post-certified dispatchers outsourced to a city 3 miles away. They don't have the working relationship, they don't have the skills, they don't have the visibility, they won't know the field officers, and it jeopardizes directly the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. Please insource this work. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rocky Sanchez, VP for Representation. I hail from Cal Poly Pomona. I too also have petitions to turn over to you, with the total number being 1,820. All of these individuals that work on your campuses, that are students or faculty, all believe in what our preamble states, that in terms of dignity and integrity, that what we want is to have everything be fair, that we have a right to work in a safe environment. But we also have a right not to be worked to death, to work so hard that our health is impacted. And I want to read a letter from an individual from Monterey Bay, because we let it be known that the bargaining team from CSU stated that workload issues come and go, that we really don't have a heavy workload. They forget in terms of when we were furloughed, a good many people left. And those of us that were left are still carrying that load. So the statement from Gus reads as such: CSU Monterey Bay is a growing campus. I have worked my job since February 2000 as the first-line technology support to an academic department. I have noted there is an increase in workload in my position and use the following as metrics to sustain this claim. The enrollment has grown from 12,000 students to 2,000 to nearly 8,000 students in spring 2017. 3 semesters of language study are required on this campus, so this department enjoys a healthy enrollment at all times. We have nearly 30 faculty members, including 3 additional tenure track faculty, nearly 10 new FTE for part-time faculty. I still support them all, but there has been 0 growth in staffing for this unit. There was funding for up to 7 20-hour per week student assistants in 2000, yet today there's only funding for 1. Our dean identified orally in 2006 that it was appropriate to add a half FTE staff line. However, the dean stepped down and a new dean does not agree. The workload has increased and there is no merit to the idea that the workload is cyclical, meaning that it ebbs and flows. We're all under a heavy burden. Those of us that work as classified staff, those of us that work the front lines, that maintain our campuses, that maintain the offices, that guarantee that students are able to run the bureaucracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. Neil Jacklin.
Good afternoon, Board of Trustees, President or Chancellor White, and presidents and guests. Staff could be likened to Cinderella, but it's Cinderella where the prince never shows up. Staff are underpaid as well as unequally paid. Management has solved their budget shortfalls on our backs. Management are given regular raises while staff are left to languish. There seems to be no limit to workload. We are told more of the same type of work is not more work. Our skills and talents are often not recognized, utilized, credited, or appreciated. Basic respect is often not afforded to us. Staff do matter. I have many letters to present from staff to Chancellor White and some of your campus presidents. I'd like you to know they are paying attention, that they care, and that they are looking at you as leaders to lead by example, not by decree, to honor the commitments to the CSU that your staff have made, to be generous towards staff, affordable, kind, thoughtful, and well-mannered, respectful, reasonable for those who support the university mission. We make what we do as a system possible, as well as make you look good and contribute to and cause your continued success. Thank you. I have these letters here for Chancellor White. That's a little bit of a load.
Wow.
These are for the other presidents.
Ooh. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our third and final group of public speakers today. Again, in no particular order: Susan McNamara, John Sulik, Jennifer Egan, Molly Talcott, Jonathan Karp, Hector Fernandez, and Ron Williams. Please approach the microphone and speak when you're ready.
Okay, I'll go. I think no one else is in the queue. And Jennifer Egan and Jonathan Karp will take their time in the morning, as we were discussing with the scheduler. They're stuck on flights. Good morning. My name's Molly Talcott. I'm a sociology professor at Cal State LA and a proud member of the California Faculty Association. First, a word of thanks. Trustees Abrego, Fagan, Morales, Simon, and White, also joined by ex officio trustees Newsom, Rendon, and Torlakson. As we noted in a letter we sent you in April, all of us in CFA appreciate that you voted, as did our academic senate, against the fee increase on students and urge this body to chart a new course for the CSU. Your vote and your comments at the March Board of Trustees meeting reflect a commitment to access and equity for current and future CSU students. We're grateful for your commitment to the People's University. Trustee Abrego, when you spoke at Cal State LA's commencement on Saturday, I let my colleagues sitting on the platform with me know that you indeed acted with appropriate audacity, as Tomas Sáenz urged our graduates to do. Unfortunately for our students, not enough of you joined your trustee colleagues, and despite CFA's vigorous lobbying efforts in favor of fully funding the CSU, Lieutenant Governor Newsom's prediction was correct. With the decision to hike fees on students, you passed the buck. Governor Brown followed suit and pulled $4 million from the original allocation for the CSU to mitigate the impact on the state of increased costs of Cal Grants caused by fee increases. And finally, I want to remind us all of the human cost of this. This week, we were all reminded of the dire consequences of the fee hike vote. You may have heard about the kidnapping by Customs and Border Patrol of our wonderful student, Claudia Rueda. Perhaps you had not heard that she was DACA eligible, but because she was committed to staying in school at Cal State LA, she could never come up with the extra $500 that it takes to apply for DACA status. And CSU students will not be merely foregoing dry cleaning and movies as a result of fee hikes, especially at this ominous moment in history. As the saying goes, voting has consequences, and it's something I urge all of you to reflect on as we move forward for advocates, for our students, and for public higher education. And yeah, my voice is shaking because our hearts have been smashed at Cal State LA with the removal of our wonderful student from our campus and our community. So thank you.
Ms. Talcott.
Thank you, Presidents, Trustees, Chancellor. Hector Fernandez again with SCTC. Come to you as all of us, again, pretty much in every unit is getting ready to go into collective bargaining or has started already. We're all aware of the shortfall from the state that continues to go on. However, we as a collaborative team need to refocus and understand the current and future economic times we're heading into. We're coming off a great 3 years for most CSU staff, with increases totaling about 10%. However, this is after a 7-year stint of no increases due to the economic times previous. California has continued the path to underfunding higher education, and we now have to look at changing the business model to adapt. Failing to acknowledge how the staff responsibilities have changed since 2009 would be fatuous. The CSU has grown in students and buildings, but the staffing and faculty levels and staff compensation have not kept pace. We set high expectations moving forward with the 2025 graduation initiative. It will require the CSU to operate more effectively and efficiently to accomplish these goals. We cannot forget the talent needed in the CSU to accomplish these goals, and we need to ensure we keep that talent within the CSU. This comes in the form of fair wages for the CSU employees. As we face uncertain times, we need to ensure our resources are properly dedicated to the employees around the CSU. I will leave you with this one thought. There are numerous studies that prove the right air quality and lighting make a difference in a student's life. Our skilled trades workers are critical to maintaining a safe and functional environment for our CSU community. However, our current electricians and mechanical technicians are paid on average 25% less than competing agencies. Our system is now having retention problems with mechanical technicians and other skilled workers. I urge the trustees and chancellors to ensure compensation pools strongly considered when the fiscal 27 and beyond budgets are done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. McNamara, John Suluk, or Ron Williams here by any chance? Right, we know Ms. Egan and Mr. Karp are experiencing flight delays. If they get here before the end of Finance Committee, with the committee's indulgence, we'll slot them in between items. With that, again, thank you to all the speakers for your comments today. It's now time for the committee to consider today's consent agenda. Would any member wish to remove any of the items on the consent agenda for a separate discussion? Hearing none. Oh, yes, I do. Trustee Morales, which item are you seeking to remove?
This is the revenue bond for Cal State LA.
Is this number?
The number 2?
Number 2. This is the Cal State LA project for the research center.
This is the.
I believe there's 2 revenue bond projects, one for San Diego, one for the
University Auxiliary Services. That's the one I want to.
Yeah, the research center. Okay, yeah. We'll remove item 2 and go to that as soon as we take a vote on appointment of the 3 members to the Fullerton Arboretum Commission. Our member is okay with a consent item and leaving the Fullerton item on? Very well. Can I get a motion on agenda item number 1?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, very well. The appointment of the 3 members to the Fullerton Arboretum Commission, as well as the minutes, are approved. Let's move then to item number 2, which is approval to issue system-wide revenue bonds and related debt instruments for projects at Cal State LA and San Diego State University. It's an action item. Mr. Eat.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. So today we have 2 projects for which we are requesting financing through the CSU system-wide revenue bond and commercial paper programs. The first project is the Rongshan Zoo Bioscience Innovation Center project at the Los Angeles campus. Schematics for this project was approved by the board at its November 2015 meeting. The requested not to exceed amount for this project is $4,980,000 based upon a project budget of just over $15 million, with donor contributions of $5 million and approximately $5.6 million in grant funding from the County of Los Angeles and the U.S. Economic Development Administration. This is an auxiliary project, and the debt service coverage ratios for this project are good, exceeding the CSU benchmarks for the project, the auxiliary, and the campus. Staff recommends approval of the financing for the project as presented in the item. The second project is the Tula Tenochca replacement project at San Diego State University. This project was presented for amendment of the capital outlay program and schematic approval during the Committee on Campus Planning, Building, and Grounds earlier today. The requested not to exceed amount for this project is $25,170,000 based upon a project budget of $24 million and a reserve contribution of $1 million from the HUD program. The debt service coverage ratios for this project are good, exceeding the CSU benchmarks for both the campus and the program, and staff recommends approval of the financing of the project as presented in the item. Chair Taylor, that concludes the presentation. We're happy to address any questions.
Very well. I'll turn to Trustee Morales for the first question.
Yeah, I'm interested in why we have this with auxiliary for them to own and operate this new facility. And so what is the advantages that come with it? Mm-hmm. And I'm also interested in who appoints folks to that auxiliary. I mean, who appoints the board members to that auxiliary. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in the overall relationship between the university and the auxiliary.
Okay. Mr. Eaton, would you like to take those, or should we turn to President
Take the first
Covino?
question, and then I'll defer to President Covino on the last 2.
Okay.
So, in this case, the auxiliary, the type of project that it is well suited to be run through an auxiliary, because if we don't use an auxiliary, if we just use the CSU sign, by statute there are only certain projects and certain types of revenue sources that we can use for system-wide revenue bonds. When we have a project that falls outside of that, which is the case here, we would have lease revenues that would come in from the project. We typically will work those through an auxiliary. That's one of the main functions that an auxiliary serves, is to try to do those types of projects for us. So that'll be the first question, and then President Covino?
Yes.
Okay.
And would you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, I want to know, what's the relationship between the university and the auxiliary, and who appoints the members of that board of the auxiliary?
The auxiliary board consists of representatives from a range of sectors in the university, from ASI, from different divisions, from the academic programs, and each of those entities advances a slate, or usually an individual or a number of individuals for board appointments.
Now, I did read the general description of the project. So how does this enhance the experience of our students there at the campus?
Well, this particular project, because it's a bioscience incubator, is going to involve students in the process. I mean, as it is currently, our students work closely with the faculty on a range of research projects. Those research projects will be working in tandem with startup initiatives in this bioscience, biotech incubator. So the students will be as closely involved in this facility as they are with faculty research projects at other points in the university.
Thank you.
Trustee Morales said one of the reasons these bonds are taxable bonds is because you want to create linkages between students, faculty members, and private sector companies who will come in and out of the research facility in the hopes that we incubate private sector companies that go on to do great things. And when you have taxable bonds, you don't quite have the restrictions on how you use the space like you do when you have tax-exempt debt. So I think Cal State LA is being very forward-looking in developing this project, and looking forward to seeing the final product, and hopefully go to the ribbon cutting if you'll invite me. All right, any other questions on item number 2, the project at Cal State LA or San Diego State? Trustee Day.
I'll make a motion to approve it. I'll just note that I happen to be a participant in the commencement ceremonies this weekend and had a chance to tour the campus and saw this specific site, and also had a chance to meet the Rongcheng family who graciously donated, I think, over $10 million to the campus, and this building and this center is a big part of that. So I can congratulate President Covino and his staff, as well as the Rongcheng family, for their generosity. And I too think it's going to be a great place for tech transfer and other great innovations. So I'll make that motion.
Terrific. We have a motion. Can we get a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item number 2? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Very well. Item 2 is passed. Let's continue on in the agenda. We'll now move to item number 3. Item number 3 is an action item requesting final approval for the public-private partnership for the LA Football Club to develop the practice facility that we just heard about at Cal State LA. Item will be presented by our CFO, Steve Relier, and Robert Eaton. Steve, please begin.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. As Chair Taylor mentioned earlier this afternoon at the Committee on Campus Planning, Buildings and Grounds, you approved the Cal State LA Master Plan revision and schematic design related to a partnership with the LA Football Club to build a training facility on the campus. And now this item requests final approval of the partnership with LAFC. As a reminder, the board granted conceptual approval back in November of last year. So this is that same project. The proposed training facility with a new Major League Soccer franchise, the LA Football Club, is a great example of how partnerships can provide much needed improvements and expand educational opportunities at campuses, including Cal State LA, and particularly as President Covino shared during the presentation at the CPBG committee meeting. I will now hand the presentation over to Assistant Vice Chancellor Robert Eaton to provide additional details on the partnership agreement. Robert?
Thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor Relier. The Los Angeles Football Club, or LAFC, is the new Major League Soccer franchise founded in 2014 and scheduled to make its professional debut in 2018. LAFC is seeking to partner with Cal State LA to construct a new sports performance facility and soccer field for the team's regular training and practice. Additionally, the proposed facility will also be made available for the LAFC Youth Academy, a community-focused program sponsored by the LAFC Sports Foundation, a nonprofit affiliate of LAFC, and which is offered to young soccer players within the local communities. As you've heard previously in the Committee on Campus Planning, Building and Grounds, the project will consist of a natural grass professional-sized soccer field and a new practice training facility. The campus will lease the development site to the LAFC, which will construct the project at an estimated cost of $26 million. The key terms of the proposed development agreements include the following: an initial ground lease term of 10 years with LAFC, with provisions for 2 additional 10-year extensions at LAFC's option. Annual ground lease rental income paid by LAFC to the campus, starting at $275,000 per year, and increasing annually at the rate of growth of the Consumer Price Index. LAFC will provide funding for the cost of maintaining and repairing the existing campus athletic field for the duration of the ground lease term. The estimated value of this provision is $110,000 per year. This would bring the existing field in compliance with NCAA requirements. LAFC has also made a contribution of $100,000, which was received by the campus in September 2016 in support of campus athletic programs, and will make additional contributions of $1.5 million in cash, the first $500,000 of which will be used to renovate the campus athletic track and field facilities. The campus will also receive 5% of revenues derived from on-site naming rights and sponsorship. This is currently estimated at $50,000 to $75,000 per year. And LAFC will be responsible for financing, constructing, operating, and maintaining the facility in good condition during the term of the lease. No campus funds will be committed to the project, and the site development will revert back to the campus upon termination of the lease. Chair Taylor, that concludes the presentation, and we're happy to address any questions.
Thank you both for your presentations. Any questions or comments from the board? Trustee
The $1.5 million, when is that received? And you said $500,000 was going to go to the track?
Yes, so they've already received $100,000
Right,
last
but
year. Yeah. $1.5 million has yet to be received. It'll be scheduled in 6 quarterly installments, and the first of $250,000 each, the first 2 of which will be earmarked for the athletic, the track and field facilities. Those will be will be scheduled as part of a gifts agreement, which has already been negotiated with the LAFC. And let me ask the campus, I don't know if that's been signed yet or not. Okay. Any minute is what I'm told. So.
And will the remaining $1 million go to sports facilities, or how will that be allocated?
At this point, it's not designated, but in talking with the campus, that's their expectation, is it will likely be used for sports facilities, but it's not been decided yet. So.
Thank you.
Trustee Abrego, then Trustee Carney.
I'm assuming that a facility of this nature in the off season will be rented out for different events, concerts or whatever. Will the university get a part of that action?
I'm not aware that the plan is to use it for concerts. Certainly, we'll use it for
or high school football games, or
yeah, they will get a portion of that. But the LAFC will be controlling the site itself, and so mostly what the campus will get a share, a usage share, opportunities for their students to take advantage of that facility. The only revenues I'm aware of that they'll get is if there's on the naming rights. So I'm not aware that they're going to get a share of any kind of rental revenues. But I don't believe that it's really contemplated for that use at this point. So.
Okay. When you say that, I'll go back to my original question. When you say they're controlling the site, I'm assuming too that a facility of this nature is going to be there'll be a lot of interest in the use of that facility, not only by the professional organization, but by the community groups and our associated students and student clubs and our kinesiology department. And if they control the facility, the scheduling of events and who gets to use it is very important. And hopefully there's a coordinating committee that will prioritize who gets to use that facility.
Yeah, with respect to the campus use, that's part of the agreement that is in place. Making arrangements as to when they're allowed to use it for the campus purposes, how often, when LAFC will be using it. For example, as you noted, when it's in season, the priority will be LAFC's practices. With respect to outside party and the usage and the rental, which maybe I misunderstood your question as to what the original was, I don't know how much of that is contemplated. I don't think much of that is contemplated at all. I'm going to let President Covino, if he knows of any intended use there, but mostly it's going to be for LAFC's use and the campus use, and then also I mentioned the LAFC Youth Academy.
Yeah, that's fine. And I also have the interest in some, I chair the institutional advancement. Any opportunity to raise funds, I'm interested in it.
It will enhance some of their revenue generating because they will do, for fundraising activities, they will have use of the facility for that, for example, in the summer, and youth programs that the campus sponsors as well.
Great. Let's go Trustee Carney and then Trustee Reyes-Salinas.
Okay, so you mentioned that the $1.5 million will be the subject of a gift agreement and not part of the lease.
That's correct.
So if the gift agreement is not honored, was that going to constitute a default on the lease?
No, it would not. It'll be a separate agreement. It's structured like that intentionally so that it would not be part of the development agreement. One way to look at it, the development agreement, the rents that come, the ground rent and some of the other, the maintenance of the fields, That, in effect, covers the value of the land from an appraised point of view. The $1.5 million has been structured as a gift agreement. It's not tied directly to the development agreement, the ground lease.
Okay, I didn't understand that from the board report on this item because it says the ground lease rental income and other financial payments from LAFC cover the fair market value.
Yeah, that's really to refer to the financial payments for the, like the maintenance of the fields. They're going to kick in some of the revenues from the sponsorship and naming rights, not the $1.5 million.
So what is the remedy if a gift agreement is not honored?
I would defer to my colleagues in advancement as to what they usually do if someone does not honor a gift agreement.
Do we have any colleagues from advancement here?
Garrett is.
We have our general counsel, though.
A gift agreement has
acting as chief advancement officer.
Has the same enforceability as any other contract. So that's the answer to it. The enforceability of it is subject to the same terms as any other contract. You have legal recourse for failing to comply with a gift agreement.
Even what? So what's the consideration for the gift agreement?
Well, there's multiple considerations. We'll have to take a look at the particular gift agreement, but
I
I
would
assume
like you to look at
there's
that
probably a
particular gift
naming
agreement.
element to it. There's other elements to it, and it doesn't matter the level of the consideration. As long as there is consideration, that is the remedy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's any opportunity to link a default under the gift agreement to a default under the lease, I think we should do it in this case because the $1.5 million would be a factor in my voting yes for this.
Okay.
Trustee Reyes-Salinas and Trustee Morales.
Thank you. I know the $100,000 goes to athletic programs. Does that also include athletic scholarships? Or can it include athletic scholarships?
That has not been determined. It is possible since there is some discretion, but we'll work out the details as we go along.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Morales.
Yeah, who will own the improvements of the facilities at the end of the lease?
Cal State LA.
Yeah, the campus.
Good.
Any other questions on this item from members of the committee or members of the board? Hearing none, this is an action item for us, members. Did I hear a motion? I heard a motion. May I have a second? We have a second. Member-only committee members can vote at this time. If there isn't any further discussion, all in favor say aye. Anybody opposed or abstain? Very well, thank you. Then the item entitled Final Approval of the Public-Private Partnership with the LA Football Club to develop a practice facility at Cal State University of Los Angeles is approved. Let's go to item number 4 with also an action item, also on a public-private partnership, this time for the mixed-use development project at San Francisco State. Item will once again be presented by CSU Board and Assistant Vice Chancellor Robert Eaton. Steve.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. The following item requests the board's final approval of a partnership to develop a new mixed-use student housing and retail project at San Francisco State University, which will provide the campus with a net increase in student beds at affordable rental rates when compared to the cost of housing in the surrounding area. In the campus Building Grounds Committee, President Wong provided an overview of how this project will advance the campus mission. Let me now hand the presentation over to Assistant Vice Chancellor Robert Eaton to provide you with additional details on the project. Robert.
Thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor Relier. As mentioned, this project is a mixed-use student housing community constructed on a site in the southeastern corner of the San Francisco State campus. The site is being ground leased to University Corporation San Francisco State, or UCorp, a recognized campus auxiliary organization, which will in turn sublease the site to the development team, Pacific Union Development Company, and Capstone Development Partners, a team with extensive experience in student housing, real estate development, public-private partnerships, and retail and residential operations. Pacific Union and Capstone will work with an equity partner, anticipated to be Harrison Street Real Estate Capital, or another comparably qualified firm, to form a limited liability company, HP LLC, to finance, build, own, and operate the facility. The estimated cost of the project is approximately $102 million. HP LLC, UCorp, and the campus have negotiated the key business terms subject to final approval by the board. These include a 65-year ground lease term with no options to extend, a ground rent structure paid by the development team to U Corp comprised of 3 components. First, a base ground rent in the initial amount of $640,000 per year with increases tied to annual increases in student housing rental rates. And in no event will the base ground rent decline from the prior year, and the base ground rent shall be senior to operating expenses and debt service. The second component is a participation rent, which shares in the net operating income of the project, subject to certain provisions. And the third component is a share of any gross residential revenues earned from occupancy levels that exceed 95%. The combination of base ground rent, participation rent, and occupancy rent is projected at $750,000 in year 2 of operation and rising to $910,000 by year 5, based on a projected occupancy level of 97%. In addition, the key terms of the development agreements call for a limit on student rental increases of no more than 3.5% per year. If the campus increases its rates beyond 3.5%, then the developer may choose to match the campus increase. A 100% equity financial structure provided by the development team. The campus will have the right to purchase the facility via a right of first refusal or a right of first offer. And the campus will provide the residential life programming, including marketing and licensing, through an agreement with the development team. The development team will be responsible for financing, constructing, operating, and maintaining the facility in good condition throughout the term of the lease. No campus or auxiliary funds will be committed to the project, and the site development will revert back to the campus upon termination of the lease and the sublease. Chair Taylor, that concludes the presentation, and we're happy to address any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eaton. Any questions or comments from the board? Trustee White.
Hi, thanks so much for that presentation. I just wanted to clarify, I missed part of what you said about how they can only raise it by a maximum of 3.5%, but then you said something that if they choose to raise it, the developer can match that. I just missed what you meant by that.
So the idea is that this project will be limited to the raises will be tied to what the campus is doing in general with its own housing on the campus. And it'll be limited to 3.5% per annum. If the campus chooses, however, to raise its rental rates on the balance of its housing inventory beyond 3.5%, then the developer on this project would have the option to raise it as well and match that. So it would be the campus that would, in effect, release the ability for the developer to raise it beyond the 3.5% through their own action.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. If I'm hearing you right, I'm a little bit concerned because obviously we know that affordable housing is really important to our students and our communities. Right. For some reason, when I heard can't raise above 3.5%, I thought there was some sort of legal binding that every year they couldn't go to 4 or 5 or 10% more. No, so this is just sort of a pinky promise and not a we will not raise it.
This is negotiated in the agreements. It's actually spelled out what the restrictions are, and anything goes beyond that is tied to what the campus's actions are.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
And just, if I indulge me following up on Trustee White's, to be very clear, as long as the campus doesn't raise housing costs above 3.5% on their other stock, then the developer can't on this one.
That's correct.
So in some ways, Trustee White, the campus does control
that.
The ability to make sure that increases don't go beyond 3.5% a year. Great. See Trustee Carney raise a hand, then Trustee Norton.
So continuing on the question of affordability, how is the initial rent for students set? And do we have any input on that, or does the campus have any input on that?
The campus has some input on the forecast. Compared to the existing housing stock for comparable units, this will be slightly higher, maybe on an magnitude of a couple of percent, maybe as much as 5%, if I remember looking at the numbers, because this will be more modern facilities and there'll be more amenities. However, compared to the general market, it will be well below the housing market surrounding the campus. So it'll still be quite affordable for the students, and it'll meet the demand that is there at the campus.
Great. Trustee Norton.
How will the tenants in the commercial space be identified, and will the campus have an opportunity to have input in that process?
The campus will have an opportunity. The agreements will allow them to be part of that process to ensure that the tenants are, consistent with the campus mission and consistent with the residential life there. So they're, and the developer also has that interest as well because it's a housing project. So the campus does have the ability to say, no, we think that tenant can create problems for us politically, perception-wise, not consistent with the campus mission, and they do have input on that.
Great. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee or the full board? Hearing none, can I get a motion on this matter? We have a motion? We have a second. Any further discussion? Very well. All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed or abstain? In that case, the item titled Final Approval of Private Partnership for the Mixed-Use Development at San Francisco State University is approved. We have one more item before us. I think I had earlier committed that Mr. Karpf and Ms. Egan could speak if they were here, but I believe they're still suffering plane delays. As somebody who flies every single week, they have my sympathy. Let's now go to item 5. It's an information item, an update on the 2017-18 support budget. As is our practice, the item will be presented by CFO Steve and Ryan Storm, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Budget. Steve, please begin.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. The 2017-2018 CSU support budget was approved by the Board of Trustees back in November of 2016. And since then, Governor Brown released his budget proposal in January of this year, 2017, and then his revised proposal earlier this month. Also, legislative budget subcommittees have taken initial action on the CSU budget. I've asked Assistant Vice Chancellor for Budget, Ryan Storm, to walk us through the budget actions to date, how those actions line up with the CSU budget plan, and the steps still needed to be complete during this budget cycle. Ryan?
Thank you, Steve. Today's update is focused on the governor's May revision, the overall state budget perspective, its impact on the CSU, and the next steps between now and the final budget in June. The May revision is the governor's opportunity to alter his January budget plan, generally to update revenue and caseload projections just before final state budget deliberations and decisions. Since the last board meeting, there have been a number of budget hearings in Sacramento where we have been able to testify about the CSU's priorities outlined in the support budget request that was approved by the board last fall. And we've had the opportunity to advocate for full funding of the CSU's incremental support budget request of $343 million. Full funding would meet budget priorities geared for student success, and it would allow us to rescind the tuition increase approved in March. The May revision is an opportunity for the governor's administration to update its revenue and expenditure projections and provide a new starting point for negotiations with the legislature before a final budget is passed and signed in June. To provide some context for our discussion, I will give a brief update of the state budget picture. I will also share the significant changes recommended by the governor's May revision affecting several state priorities. I will then cover the impact of the May revision on CSU's budget plan, as well as the changes offered by both houses of the legislature. And finally, I'll review the steps that will happen in Sacramento between now and the final budget agreement. From a big picture, state-level perspective, the May revision is a step in the right direction. The governor's administration estimates that state revenues are expected to rise by $1.8 billion when compared to the revenue estimate from January. This increase has allowed the governor's administration to propose positive adjustments when compared to their initial January proposals. Some areas of the restored or increased investment include funding for K-14 education, going forward with scheduled child care provider rate increases, assisting counties with the cost of care for elderly and disabled Californians through the In-Home Supportive Services Program, and setting aside additional reserves in the state's rainy day fund. Now, the governor's proposal includes two notable changes for the CSU. First, a $4 million recurring general fund reduction. That $4 million would be redirected and used to cover private college and university Cal Grant costs. This would shrink the amount of the funding available for the CSU support budget plan from $157 million down to $153 million. Accounting for the change in the governor's funding commitment, the initial $168 million funding gap has widened between the governor's plan and the trustee's support budget request, which is a move in the wrong direction. We have the time and the ability, however, to move it in the right direction. The second other notable change is an indication from the governor's administration that future investments in the CSU will decrease. For the last 3 years, the governor's administration has committed to providing about a 4% increase to our general fund appropriation. The May revision pivots away from the 4% and instead suggests that the governor's administration will only commit to a 3% increase in the future. That would represent a year-over-year drop of 25% in new funding commitments, or about $30 million less in recurring funds for the 2018-19 fiscal year. The state legislature has taken action as well. The Senate Budget Subcommittee took 2 notable actions on the CSU. First, a $153 million recurring support budget increase consistent with the governor's May proposal. That's the 157 minus the 4 million that I described earlier. Also, the Senate added $25 million of one-time funding next year to support Graduation Initiative 2025 related activities. The state provided $35 million of one-time funding this year for this purpose. The Assembly Budget Committee is expected to take action on the CSU budget today. A notable development on student financial aid occurred earlier this year. The Assembly Subcommittee took action to reject the governor's proposal to phase out the middle class scholarship program. So through the budget cycle for 2017-18, the CSU and its stakeholders regularly communicated with leaders in Sacramento to promote the importance of fully funding the CSU. We will continue with these advocacy efforts until the budget is signed. More detail on these efforts will be shared by Kathleen Shavira during the legislative update coming up next. But before I end, these are the next steps on the support budget. The Senate and Assembly will hold final budget hearings, and they will reconcile differences between their budget plans to create a single budget plan. While that occurs, gubernatorial and legislative leadership typically meet to try to negotiate a final budget deal. The product of those final hearings and the budget negotiations will result in the legislature voting on a final state budget in the middle of June. And the last step of the state process will be the governor's approval of the state budget by June 30th, which may include line item vetoes. So what does this mean for the CSU? There's a small proposed budget reduction, and the governor's plan continues to be significantly less than the trustees' budget request. Also, the state's coffers are slightly improved since January, and there has been interest by the legislature to invest more in the CSU. As a result, we have and will continue to request full funding of the trustees' support budget plan from the state and do our best to advocate for a budget that will allow 2 things. First, it would allow the university to fulfill its obligations to students and more broadly to the people of California. And second, full funding of the budget plan would automatically rescind the tuition increase approved in March. With final state budget decisions still to be determined, there is not enough information at this time to determine a final budget for the CSU for the approaching fiscal year at this meeting. Instead, the Chancellor's Office will await final state decisions before finalizing the CSU budget. And that's pursuant to a board resolution passed in November 2016 that authorizes the Chancellor to adjust and amend the support budget to reflect changes in the assumptions upon which the budget is based. The Chancellor's Office will provide proper notification to the trustees. Trustee Taylor, this ends my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Storm. At this point, any questions or comments from members of the board about this particular item? Trustee Nylon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that presentation. Are we to accept a message or a signal from the governor's office with regard to a rationale for the decreases other than his concern about a impending recession? Are there any other messages that we should be hearing or listening to with regard to these reductions?
I think the first one, I think you nailed that already, which is basically that he anticipates at some point in the near future the economy souring, and he's, I think, positioning, his administration is positioning itself to be able to be flexible in that regard. I think another thing that is part of the discussion is this $4 million reduction. There are two elements to it. I think first and foremost, I think it's driven mostly by the proposal by the administration to keep current Cal Grant rates consistent for private colleges and universities. So they have a fiscal policy proposal to keep them at the current rate. They were scheduled to float down by about $1,000 per student for each grant. That would cost about that would cost the state about $8 million. And the administration is suggesting that because of the additional increases that the state has provided to the CSU and the UC on the Cal Grant front, that it makes some sort of connection to supporting the Cal Grant program by reducing the general fund in our budget in order to put a priority basically on financial aid for all students, all Californians that qualify for that program.
I was speaking also to the recurring reduction from 4% to 3% in terms of new growth. Is there a message there that we should be listening to?
I think it's just consistent with the cautious and reserved tone of the administration to be prepared for economic uncertainty going forward. And I think one of the key things that they have pointed out, and again stressed in the May revision, is that we continue to approach levels or durations of times where the economy has improved beyond natural and historical levels. And so it's just a matter of time from, I think, the administration's perspective that general fund might be limited in the future. And I think it's just trying to prepare us for the future, I think, is what it boils down to.
Great. Let's go to Trustee White, then Trustee Campbell.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that presentation. I appreciate the thoroughness of looking at those next steps in this complicated process. And I think I have more of a comment than a question, but we'll see how this develops as my mouth goes faster than my brain. But I'm glad to see, and I'm excited to see these commitments in the state budget proposed for K-14 education, things like senior care, care for the disabled. I don't think that the CSU needs to be in competition with these things. And so I'm excited to see those developments in their funding. But I can't help but think almost every time that I see a new budget from the state that it's desperately short-sighted. Because if the state has decided that it cares about things like K-14 education and senior care, they're going to need a lot more nurses and teachers. And no one provides those people better than the California State University system. And so I'm not just worried about tomorrow, I'm worried about 10 years from now, when we have a huge shortage, even more than we're seeing now, of those teachers and nurses who we desperately need to keep our economy and our lives going. And so I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think it's terribly short-sighted, this lack of funding for the CSU. I think that rather than being competition for these other areas of funding, like K-14 education, we're a solution to the problems that they're facing. And so I'm excited to see what the Senate and Assembly come up with over the next couple of days and weeks. I hope to see something a little more focused on investing in the future rather than just tomorrow. And I appreciate, I believe it's the Senate that's put forward $25 million of the one-time funding for GI 25. Is that correct, the Senate? And I appreciate that very much. I think that we'll be happy with an investment from the state and our very important graduation initiative. But yet again, this is an approach that's not looking long-term. The graduation initiative needs to get us at least to 2025 and further on to see our graduation rates where they should be to serve the state of California best. And so one-time funding, when you're talking about hiring tenure-track faculty, when the funding is only for the next year, how do you hire someone for a year and then say, you know what, we've got to let you go, we just don't have the funding? And so I think it's a poor way to fund the system. I look forward to finding better solutions in the future, but I do appreciate the small gains that we're making. I appreciate you going through that report.
Thank you, Trustee White. I think I speak for everybody in saying, I hope one day you run for office because you speak so clearly and eloquently. We could use your voice in Sacramento in a formal way. Trustee Campbell.
I have just a question to be clear about the $4 million reduction by the governor's office. Is that directly tied to their responsibility for Cal Grants due to our tuition hike? I was reading the budget summary, and I don't know if I perhaps missed the last meeting, some discussion of that. Can you explain that a little bit to me?
I think the rationale that was described in the governor's budget summary is doing a couple things like I described earlier. I think it's talking about that because of the tuition increases adopted by both UC and CSU, the state has, I believe, about a $48 or $49 million increase in Cal Grant costs. And so I think one of the things that the administration is depicting there is that their costs are going up for this really critical program. And then I think it's also a little bit of the discussion about wanting to make sure that all Cal Grant recipients are basically held harmless in their budget plan, right? The idea was that during the Great Recession, there was a very last, one of the last actions that was taken was to reduce those private colleges and universities grants over a longer period of time. And so next year was supposed to be a phase-in where it went from about a $9,000 grant down to $8,000. So what you see here is the administration saying we really value financial aid and financial aid for our lowest income citizens who and students, and we want to be able to provide them as much of an education as they can at the lowest prices they can. So I think it's just a value of pointing out that they want to keep the Cal Grant funded in a significant way, but they are identifying the fact that because of the tuition increases that they do have consequences of it. Because one of the things with the Cal Grant program is that if you receive a Cal Grant award, it is tied to the price of tuition.
Right.
And so as tuition rises in both of our segments, then the costs to the state go up. So I think it's just a matter of explaining the rationale, what the administration was doing, and trying to make the connection to all their moving parts on financial aid in support of the universities and support of students.
Right. So just to be clear, because I think, I mean, I hadn't thought about this before. When we raise tuition, not only are this a certain group, usually middle income students and higher income students and their families paying more, but then the state is also then, like you said, it's going to be $28 million more to make up for that increase, correct?
That's right. On their side, they will have $28 million more of general fund costs for the students who attend the CSU.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Campbell. Trustee Campbell's question raises for me, maybe CFO Aurelier, it might be useful in the next year. One of our deep dive topics is into the entitlement program that is Cal Grants. Cal Grants so terribly important for our students, and I'm not sure trustees have a firm grasp on the various ins and outs of Cal Grants and how that impacts students. So maybe one of our deep dive topics, we can look into entitlement programs, the good, the bad, the ugly, as it relates to the CSU. We'll put that on a topic for further discussion. Any other comments, questions about the May revision 2017-18 budget proposals as they currently lie? One more from Trustee White.
Just one more and then I'm done. Just very quickly, it just occurred to me, you were mentioning that the increase in Cal Grants, which came from that $4 million cut to our budget, were sort of a consequence of the tuition increase. The money needed to be redirected. It occurs to me that the tuition increase was a very unfortunate consequence due to the state's disinvestment in the CSU system and the graduation initiative. And so it seems to be a pretty awful, vicious cycle that we keep going through in our relationship with the state. And like I said earlier, I look forward to finding better ways to fund these really important things like financial aid, like classes, like tenure track faculty. Thanks.
Great. Chancellor White.
Chair Taylor, I just wanted to try and link three conversations together here in an arc. And so obviously discussing the issue that our current budget is in and the uncertainties that remain in the rest of this legislative and political season, tying into the next conversation from our folks in government affairs about closing the game with respect to advocacy, using presidents and trustees and everybody to make the case to support the eloquent words of Trustee White. And then finally, following that will be a conversation by Vice Chancellor Blanchard, reminding us of both the progress and the needs with respect to the graduation initiative. And these are not independent topics. They are all related. And so when we look at this as an ecosystem, if you will. If we're less successful or more successful in any one of them, it has an impact on the others. And I just wanted to try and create that arc in our conversation as we continue to make the case, as Trustee White said, that many of the other costs that are associated at the state are actually investments that the CSU and by extension the other public universities in the state can help mitigate those costs when done well. And I'll remind us that we have this lingering long-term horizon, medium-term horizon that will be inherited by the next governor of this state with respect to a deficit, a drought in individuals who hold baccalaureate degrees, that it's easy to kick that can, but it is upon us. And those students are finishing up third grade and going into fourth grade today.
Yeah. Well said. All right, any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns as it relates to the 2017-18 budget? Very well, hearing none. Chair Day, that concludes the business and finance. And for the record, 18 minutes early.
Thank you, Trustee Taylor. I will take credit for our place on the clock.
That's because it's a skinny budget.
You can, that's right. Please relay that to Chair Eisen. Trustee Norton, will you please convene the Committee on Government Relations?
Will the Committee on Government Relations please come to order? We will now hear public comment from those who have signed up to address agenda items coming before the committee today. Speakers will have 3 minutes each. Speakers will hear a buzzer signaling their time has concluded, and at that time we ask that you yield the microphone to the next speaker. I have 2 people on my list, Kevin Weir and Alejandra Marchevsky. Kevin or Alejandra? Oh. Your microphone, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Molly Talcott. I'm a proud member of CFA and the faculty at Cal State LA, and I'll be speaking on behalf of Alejandra Marchevsky. Last Saturday, as I mentioned, Tomas Sayen spoke at Cal State LA's commencement, and in his speech, he counseled new grads that as credentialed professionals, they will increasingly be actors within institutions and centers of power, and he urged them to act with appropriate audacity in promoting social justice and moral vision in unlikely places. His advice applies to every single one of us in this room, and today, on behalf of our students, their families, our communities, we are asking you to act not with equivocation, but with appropriate audacity in vigorously supporting AB 21. While we appreciate that you didn't outright oppose it, we need you to join the dozens of organizations in California who are standing on the right side of history in our strong support for AB 21. This bill would play a critical role in protecting our undocumented students and providing concrete assistance to them if they face legal challenges. Xenophobic state violence has already slammed our hearts at Cal State LA with the kidnapping of Claudia Rueda by CBP. We now know that they stalked her for 3 days until they were able to get a warrant, and that she was targeted in retaliation for her community work on behalf of immigrants. So I want to now quote my colleague Alejandra Marchevsky, Claudia's professor. Quote, Claudia Rueda is a student in my class this semester where we read sociologist Lacey Abrego's study of the effects of family separation on transnational immigrant families in the U.S. and El Salvador. In response to the book, Claudia wrote, quote, why aren't many psychologists and others advocating for immigrant rights or against the further creation of illegality when populations of children and parents across borders are suffering from mental health problems due to U.S. policies? End Claudia's quote. As the semester advanced, these policies took their toll on Claudia. Initially an engaged and academically talented student, she grew more and more withdrawn in response to Trump's draconian immigration enforcement tactics. About a month ago, her worst fears were realized when her mother was detained by the Border Patrol in their home in East LA. Claudia stopped coming to class altogether, and on social media, she wondered whether she would ever return to college at all. And finally, I want to note that's the end of Alejandra Marchevsky's quote, my colleague. Finally, I want to note that even when those being deported are not CSU students, they are their parents, grandparents, and other family members. Mass deportation causes anxiety in our students and compromises their ability to finish their education. All of our students need protection from state violence and support to complete degrees under extreme duress. Platitudes about diversity and social justice do little, yet supporting AB 21 would signal a concrete and material commitment to our students who are quaking in fear and anxiety and looking to you to be their strong allies. Chancellor White, trustees, campus presidents, now is the time for you to muster some appropriate audacity. Support AB 21 and do all you can to advocate for the release of Claudia Rueda. You now have all the knowledge you need about what immigrant students are facing in the CSU. Now we ask you to exhibit wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Kevin?
Kevin Weir's not. He'll speak in the morning, I think, as it's been arranged.
Thank you. On today's agenda item, we have one consent item and one information item. The consent item is the approval of the March 2017 meeting minutes. If there are no changes or objections, the minutes are approved as submitted. The next item on the agenda is a legislative update for our review. Vice Chancellor Garrett Ashley will introduce the item.
Thank you, Trustee Norton. Legislative activity in Sacramento has intensified as expected since our last board meeting. Our advocacy and state relations team and CSU colleagues are actively working on priority legislation while also appearing before multiple policy and budget committees. As we heard in the Finance Committee a moment ago, the focus of our advocacy efforts and a major focus of the legislature at this time is the state budget. State leaders are now in the final weeks of deliberations with a June 15 deadline to pass the budget bill and a June 30 deadline for the governor to sign the bill. Today we will update you on our advocacy efforts, policy bill positions, and CSU-sponsored legislation. The information provided on bill positions follows recent consultation with the chair and vice chair of the committee. Kathleen Shavira, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Advocacy and State Relations, will present the information. Kathleen.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Ashley. I'd like to begin with a brief update on our budget advocacy activities. As noted by Assistant Vice Chancellor Ryan Storm in his report on the 17-18 support budget, while the governor's May revise falls short of the funding we'd requested, we continue to work with the CSU stakeholder community to advocate for full funding of the trustees' budget request. We also continue to emphasize the connection between our budget request and the successful implementation of our Graduation Initiative 2025, which you will hear more about in the Education Policy Committee report, which follows, to be presented by Executive Vice Chancellor Lauren Blanchard. In the last month, we have actively engaged legislative members who champion the CSU. Letters of support for the CSU's full budget request have been sent to the governor from the members of the Latino Caucus, the Black Caucus, and the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus. In addition, former ex officio trustee Senator Tony Atkins has led an effort to secure a similar letter from Senate members, and along with 19 of her colleagues, has submitted the same request to the governor. Copies of these letters were provided to leadership in both houses, as well as to the leadership of the appropriate budget committees. In the last month, Chancellor White has also initiated conversations with legislative members of the policy and budget committees in the Assembly. He's met with key leadership staff in the Senate and met with the leadership of the Department of Finance. These efforts have all been complemented by the activities of our CSU students, faculty, and staff as they too advocate for the full funding of your budget request. Finally, partnering with our CSSA students, the Capitol has been blanketed with our Choose CSU message. Here you see door hangers with messages posted by legislative members giving the reasons that they choose CSU. Our final advocacy event is scheduled for May 31st as we elevate the Choose CSU message in the week that the 17-18 budget is being finalized. This event will involve extensive social media activity, which we are coordinating in the Capitol and with our campuses. Next, I'd like to provide our legislative update. Since the bill introduction deadline on February 17th, both the Assembly and Senate have held numerous policy committee hearings to consider the more than 2,500 bills introduced this year. As I noted in March, we've been monitoring about 600 bills moving through the legislative process as they attempt to meet policy and fiscal committee deadlines in their respective houses. April 28th was the final day for policy committees to hear and report bills with fiscal impacts to appropriations committees, and May 12th, the final day to report non-fiscal measures to the floor. As it stands, 473 bills met these deadlines and are still considered to be active for this legislative year. The 134 that did not meet these deadlines are now considered to be two-year bills. While authors may continue to work to address issues and questions raised about these bills, they cannot resume movement through the legislative process until next year. Some of these bills will cease to move forward. Many of the active bills are currently awaiting action in the Appropriations Committee, which assesses the fiscal impact of each measure. Bills with specified cost thresholds are on a suspense file, giving the committee the opportunity to determine which are the highest priority for moving forward and which will be held in the Fiscal Committee. Legislators are anxiously awaiting the outcome of this final review, which will occur late this week. I'm pleased to report that each of the board-sponsored measures are still active and successfully moving through the legislative process. Assembly Bill 422, which permanently extends the CSU's authority to offer the Doctor of Nursing practice, passed the Assembly Higher Education Committee with bipartisan support and is currently awaiting action on the Appropriations Committee suspense file. AB 819, which permanently continues the existing authority of CSU to draft and adopt our own regulations, has successfully made its way through the Assembly and is awaiting action in the Senate Education Committee. SB 363, which addresses a technical issue relating to a small number of bank accounts that CSU and its campuses hold for study abroad programs, has also successfully made its way through the Senate and has been referred to Banking and Finance Committee in the Assembly. Of the approximately 30 bills presented to you at our March meeting, 26 were passed by policy committees and are still active, and 6 are now two-year bills. As you can see on page 3 of your agenda item, several of the bills that would have expanded degree offerings at either the CSU or community colleges are now two-year bills. In addition, AB 1231 would have required merit salary step adjustments each year for CSU support staff is also a two-year bill. On page 4 of the agenda item, you see the beginning of an updated list of bills being tracked by ASR staff. This list includes bills we previously presented to you, many of which have an updated position. These actions were taken as ASR staff engaged in conversations with staff from the legislature and the Chancellor's office to better understand potential impacts, benefits, and concerns. And while we believe that all of the bills in your agenda item are of interest, I would like to briefly highlight a few. Beginning on page 4, I'd like to note that we have gone from a watch to a support position on SB 68 and also on AB 1622, which is outlined on page 10. As we've determined that both are consistent with our efforts to support diversity and inclusivity on our campuses. In addition, we have moved to a support position on Senate Bill 331, which is located on page 5, which supports our efforts to ensure a victim-centered policy on sexual assault. I would also like to note that we have adopted a support position on SB 483 by Senator Glazer, which was recently amended to designate half of the $2 billion in general obligation bonds it authorizes, specifically for CSU capital outlay projects. Letters of support for these measures have been shared with the authors and with the appropriate committees. New additions to the agenda item include SB 25 by Senator Portantino, which aligns state law to recently revised federal law and ensures that California veterans and their dependents continue to be eligible to receive education benefits under the post-9/11 GI Bill. As you can see on page 4 of your agenda item, we have adopted a support position on this bill. I would also like to note AB 917 by Assembly Member Joaquin Arambula, located on page 9, which requires the public segments of higher education to adopt a policy on student suicide prevention. We currently have a supportive amended position on the measure and are working towards amendments that ensure the flexibility to adjust the policy as necessary to reflect best practices rather than mandating specific elements in the policy. We continue with a watch position on several bills as we work with legislative members to address concerns or find mutually agreeable alternatives. Related to our bill tracking efforts, I'd like to highlight a project that my staff have been working on. I think we have a slide that should be up on the screen. So over the past several months, we have worked with communications staff from the Chancellor's Office to update the ASR website. Our goal was to make it an informative resource for external audiences seeking information on CSU's legislative positions, budget requests, and more. As you can see, all of this information is now just a click away, along with our social media activity, lists of ASR staff, and campus legislative liaisons. So that concludes my legislative update. However, I would like to close by acknowledging the contributions of several of our campuses to our recent Golden Bear advocacy event in Sacramento. I'd like to thank the Sonoma, Fresno, and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo campuses for their donations of campus-produced wine for the event, the Sacramento State campus for the music provided by Sacramento State students, the cadets and the staff of the Golden Bear for the beautifully prepared food and their friendly and informative tours of the ship. And finally, thank you to President Cropper of the CSU Maritime Academy for providing us the opportunity to highlight one of the many unique educational opportunities that the CSU contributes to the state of California. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathleen, for your presentation today. I think we can all see that you've been busy. Questions or comments? Silas?
Yeah. On AB 21, I'm curious to know why we're in a watch position. As I review the content of the bill from the handbook that I've got here, all the things that are listed here are services that we already provide our students. Guidance about their rights under the state, we do that. We're very careful on how we release confidential information. So what's holding us up from switching from watch to support?
Yes. So first, we are continuing to work with the author's office, hoping to move to at least a neutral, possibly a support position. As with most legislation, the devil is in the details of the language. So for example, when we talk about providing, I guess, assistance in a strictly confidential manner, the concern is that that implies legal services, which we're not equipped.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
So what I'm saying is there's some language in the bill that talks about providing staff that are available to assist in a strictly confidential manner. So one of our concerns is that that generally implies legal services, and our campuses aren't equipped to provide that sort of thing. Another example is the requirement that we continue to provide financial aid. And our concern is that we don't necessarily have the resources to potentially cover all these benefits. I think, again, the continued conversation with the author's office is about wordsmithing the language so that we can get to a support position. But those are some examples of, I guess, the complexity of some of the provisions of the bill.
Yeah, I certainly agree that we can't provide legal advice. I know a lot of the Dream Centers do provide referral services for students to get that kind of advice. And on the concern about financial aid, as long as a student is an AB 540 student, is considered an enrolled student, shouldn't they have the right to financial aid? They shouldn't lose that privilege, right?
So current law does allow AB 540 students to be eligible for state aid, but we don't always have, let me back up. The Cal Grant program is structured in a way that provides an entitlement to those students going directly into a four-year institution. We may have a subset of students who don't meet the standard for the entitlement program for the Cal Grant program, in which case, if they lose benefits, then they are not necessarily going to be able, we're not going to be able to backfill all the resources that might have been provided to them previously. So we're trying to ensure that we're not committing to doing something that we don't have the resources to provide, or to ensure that those resources are made available to us if we want to be able to do that for our students.
Thank you. Keep me posted in this bill.
I will, sir.
Other comments or questions? George.
Thank you, Kathleen, for all that work and extreme detailed presentation. For AB 917, can you explain a little more of why we what we're waiting for to be amended specifically?
Oh, so as currently drafted, the bill mandates that we have certain elements in the policy. We're in a supportive amended position, which means we don't oppose this bill. We think this is an important thing to do. But in order to move to a support position, what we have been asking the author to do is consider to build in greater flexibility so that we can modify the policy as appropriate as we get better information, as best practices change. As currently drafted, the bill outlines a specific set of elements that need to be in every policy. So in principle, we support this. I think we just want to see if we can try to work some language in there that gives us greater flexibility as circumstances change.
Go ahead, George.
I have a different question for, I don't know if you had a follow-up for this one.
Go ahead.
Okay. For AB 1062, adding those two student members, does that mean they're all voting? I know before it was 2 voting, 2 non-voting. I'm not sure if it's changed since it passed through the Assembly Appropriations Committee.
I don't believe the amendments changed any of the provisions of the bill. But to be honest with you, I'd have to take a look at the bill. I haven't seen those amendments.
Okay.
I will follow up with you, though, outside of the meeting to make sure you get the information.
Kathleen, going back for a moment to AB 21, I realize that your crystal ball is no clearer than any of the rest of us, but is it your sense that the office and the staff have been receptive to the concerns that you have raised with regard to these complexities?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's been an ongoing dialogue with the author's office, and I think they have been receptive to the input that comes not only from the California State University system, but also from the University of California and the California Community Colleges. I think we are working collaboratively with the author's office to be clear about our concerns, to work towards resolutions, to work towards language that we can be comfortable with, but that also satisfies what the author is trying to accomplish. So it is an open dialogue.
Good. Thank you. Other comments? Maggie?
If I can take a quick moment of personal privilege, I just realized this is actually my last committee meeting as vice chair of the committee, and so I thought it'd be an appropriate time to thank you, Kathleen and Garrett, and I hope you'll pass my thanks along to your staff in Sacramento and here in Long Beach. I think that we've had an incredibly challenging year in Sacramento, and I think that everyone on your team has done an incredibly good job of handling it and moving forward our agenda and our mission as a system. So I want to thank you on behalf of students and trustees. I'm really pleased to see some of this legislation. I know we've spoken about many of these previously, many times, and I'm especially happy. SB 331 about the domestic violence counselor victim privileges, and then the suicide prevention legislation as well. I'm really happy to see these. We know that these are issues on our campuses and in our communities. I'm really pleased to see the work that you have done and also the work that the legislators are doing on our behalf. And so I really appreciate that. And just want to let you know you're very much needed and appreciated here. And you've done a lot for this system this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee White. Always so gracious.
Anything further? If not, then that concludes the work of the Committee on Government Relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Norton. Trustee Kimbell, will you please convene a Committee on Educational Policy?
Thank you, Chair Day. Will the Committee on Educational Policy please come to order? We now invite public comment preceding the educational policy agenda items. We have 2 speakers Susan Green, and Cecil Canton. The same plane? Okay. All right then. Good luck with the traffic. We have one item on today's consent agenda, approval of the minutes from the September meeting. If there are no objections, the minutes are approved. Okay. The committee has 3 items on today's discussion agenda. Item 1 is an information item regarding the Graduation Initiative 2025. The item will be presented by Dr. Lauren Blanchard, Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs. Dr. Blanchard, please begin.
Thank you so much, Chair Kimbell. Today's report on the Graduation Initiative 2025 will focus on work that is underway to reach our ambitious student completion and equity targets, allowing the CSU to improve student success and meet the future workforce needs of California. There are 4 topics in particular that we wish to provide updates on today. The operational priorities, where focus is needed to achieve our goals. The work underway to dramatically improve academic preparation. The progress we are making to ensure financial need does not derail student success, and the funding that was recently allocated to campuses in support of their Graduation Initiative 2025 plans. So just as an update, at the March Board of Trustees meeting, we presented a similar chart that you see depicted on the screen here, showing 5 operational priorities for Graduation Initiative 2025. Based on feedback from campus constituents, we have recently added a 6th category, student engagement and well-being. As a reminder, the CSU's aspirational goals for the operational priority areas are, first, academic preparation, where we will provide CSU students, including those who arrive academically underprepared, the opportunity and support needed to complete 30 college-level semester units, 45 quarter units, before beginning their 2nd academic year. Second, enrollment management, where we will assure students are able to enroll in the courses they need when they need them. Third, student engagement and well-being, one that's recently added, where we will continue to address the well-being of CSU students while fostering a strong sense of belongingness on our campuses. Fourth, financial aid, where we will ensure that financial need does not impede student success. Fifth, data-driven decision-making. We will use data-rich evidence to identify and advance the most successful academic support programs. And last but not least, at administrative barriers, where we will identify and remove unnecessary administrative impediments. To provide implementation guidance, work groups are now being created for each of these 6 priority areas. Campus presidents, the Academic Senate, and the CSSA were asked to recommend individuals for the various work groups, which we anticipate convening some of the work groups beginning next month. Also at the March Board of Trustees meeting, we presented a new approach to academic preparation aimed at ensuring college readiness for all students. This approach includes promoting 4 years of high school mathematics and quantitative reasoning, improved placement and assessment, strengthening early start, and restructuring developmental education. Staff from the Chancellor's Office has continued consulting with a number of different constituent groups that you see reflected on the screen, representing campus administration, faculty, and students regarding this different approach, this new approach to academic preparation. We seek to ensure that addressing students' academic preparation in English and mathematics is not a disproportionate barrier to degree completion. The feedback received from this consultative process was incorporated into a draft executive order released earlier this month. The Chancellor's Office is currently soliciting a second round of feedback that will be used to develop the final policy, as well as shape planned implementation reflecting the collective advice of experts from around the CSU system. I would now like to spend a few moments highlighting our work on the fourth operational priority, financial aid and support. As you have heard us state before, more than 60% of all CSU students have their tuition fully covered by non-loan aid. As part of the Graduation Initiative 2025, we are thinking about financial aid in two ways: as a support and as a potential incentive. The financial aid work group that is convening this summer will be exploring these topics in depth and making system-wide policy recommendations. One strategy in particular that the work group will explore is increasing students' financial literacy by providing information on the benefits of graduating a year or even a term earlier. Students who graduate one semester earlier will save more than $4,000 in tuition, fees, books, and supplies. It is imperative that students are aware of this potential cost savings and the impact graduating earlier can have on their lifetime earnings so that they can make informed decisions when planning their course schedules and graduation timelines. Some of our CSU campuses have already begun to incorporate this type of information into regular communication with their students. For example, Sacramento State has launched a financial aid portal which gives students a clear picture of the amount of financial aid they have used, along with the remaining balance. Additionally, the Chancellor's Office has partnered with students at CSU Northridge's innovative Meta Lab to develop a career path app. This app will help students navigate the career choices and average salaries of students who graduated from every major offered at that respective campus. I would also like to briefly highlight how some campuses are providing students with micro grants and emergency loans. The majority of CSU campuses already have some type of emergency program for their students. One example is Fresno State, where micro grants are made available to students who are on track to graduate, but who face financial shortfalls that impede their path to a college degree. A sum as small as $150 and ranging upwards can really make the difference between a student dropping out or earning a degree. These types of programs epitomize the spirit of the Graduation Initiative and underscore our commitment to ensuring that CSU students are given every opportunity to succeed. Complementing our efforts to increase student financial literacy and college affordability, I'd like to highlight some good news that some of you may have heard before, but I'd like to reinforce now, and that's around year-round Pell Grants. Earlier this month, we were pleased to see the federal enactment of a spending bill that included the restoration of year-round Pell Grant eligibility, enabling students to complete coursework now in the summer. Beginning summer 2018, this will provide students much needed flexibility, resulting in faster progress to degree and the ability to attend college while meeting other responsibilities. The CSU played an important role in advocating for this policy. In February and then again in April, Chancellor White traveled to Washington, D.C. to advocate for year-round Pell Grants, along with some of our presidents as well. In April, he was joined by CSU advocates, including trustees, presidents, and members of the Academic Senate and CSSA. This really is a tremendous win, which will positively impact the thousands of students who receive Pell Grants, many of whom are from historically underserved communities. Campuses continue to use the $35 million in one-time funding provided by the state to support their Graduation Initiative 2025 work focused on 2-year and 4-year graduation rates. Additionally, in early May, the Chancellor's Office reallocated $10 million in one-time funding from course redesign and lottery funds. Campuses will use a portion of these funds to promote campus development of instructional innovations aligned with our newly proposed academic preparation model. Additionally, they will use these funds to make technological improvements to increase the use of data-driven decision-making or to invest in financial literacy and microgrant programs for students that I described earlier. Beyond this one-time funding, each campus will now use the new tuition revenue to support its individual graduation initiative plans, targeting system-wide priorities of hiring more faculty, offering additional high-demand course sections, and providing enhanced academic and student support services such as advising, mentoring, and tutoring. As you have heard, both in this update and in recent months, work is underway at the system level and on the campuses in particular to achieve the goals of Graduation Initiative 2025. We are leveraging expertise from across the system to guide our operational priorities, increase financial support for students, and transform our approaches to academic preparation. Coupled with the great news about year-round Pell Grants, we are making good progress on our efforts to close equity gaps and to provide additional opportunities to help expedite the path to a college degree for all CSU students. Chair Kimbell, this concludes my presentation, and I'm always pleased to be joined by Dr. James Minor, Senior Strategist for Academic Success and Inclusive Excellence, along with Mr. Jeff Gold, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Success Strategic Initiatives, as well as Dr. Chris Mallon, who is Assistant Vice Chancellor for Academic Programs and Faculty Development, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have or to listen to any comments that you might raise.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard, and thank you to your team for all the valuable information and hard work that you've been doing on the initiative. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Ugo, Larry, and John, and Jane? All right. Ugo?
Yeah, I would like to ask you if you may explain a little bit further about the math requirement, the 4-year math. As I understand, this is now is it high school math? And if it is that math, what kind of math are we talking about? In other words, is it calculus? Is it algebra? Is it, what are we talking about?
So I'll start and I'll ask Chris Mallon to join me on this one. So the work that will need to be done is that it's not necessarily focused, it is to add a 4th year of high school mathematics, and that which means that we would have to work very strategically with our high school partners as well as our community college partners, but mainly our high school partners, because right now we've got about 60% of the students that we enroll, they already have 4 years of high school mathematics. The ones that we'd like to ensure that we're engaging as well are those school districts where we see that there are gaps, where we don't have as many students that really are completing that 4th year of mathematics or quantitative reasoning. And the quantitative reasoning part is what broadens the definition, that it's not necessarily that we're asking that 4th year be calculus. It certainly can be courses like business mathematics, as an example, could be computer science as example, but we want to make sure that those students have that quantitative capability and that acclimation in that fourth year, so that by the time they are ready to take or retake the ACT or SAT, or even with respect to some of the work that we're doing around smarter balance and the tests that they have to check there, that there is a greater level of familiarity, which is going to empower them to perhaps not only score very well on those respective tests on the math subtest side, but also then be completely ready by the time they enter our doors at the CSU.
Well, I just want to say that I support, that direction in principle, or at least in general. Well, not sure principle, but the idea, makes a lot of sense because, math is so important. What that can mean in terms of being able to learn in general. Beyond math, I know the math can help you understand a lot more things. But what I'm worried about would be exactly what you meant about folks from communities that have been traditionally been underserved, but you were talking about African American, English learners, and also I would think probably students from small rural communities where perhaps the offerings of math may not be as diverse or as they would be, as they could be, and as at least again in my experience in Fresno, where I participated in some of the discussions there about English learners, I was surprised by the general lack of preparation of students, English learners, at the elementary school level. Which, if they're not prepared in elementary school, how can they be?
Excuse me,
prepared at the
Ugo.
higher
Could
level?
I ask you to speak up or get a little bit closer? I can't really hear you.
So anyway, I am
Thank
interested in knowing what impact, or at least I'm worried about the impact this may have. Even though I support the idea, I just wonder what unintended consequences would be in terms of providing access to a college degree to, English learners, African Americans, and some foster children, because those are some of the folks that have traditionally not had, success in the math experience.
You raised some very important points, Trustee Morales, and I don't want the misperception to be that we are going to jump into this right away and make it a requirement immediately for all school districts. We recognize wholeheartedly, given the factors that you just shared, that we've got work to do with the school districts in making sure that they not only will have the kind of funding, but also the kind of academic platform in place so that within time that it will become a requirement. But right now we're going to start it out with it being a very strong recommendation. But understanding the value of our partnership with K-12 in ensuring that we can work with those school districts that right now don't have that option as viable as we'd like to see it for the students, to help them to get ready for the new requirement in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Norton.
Just two brief questions. I'm curious, is there an upper limit to the micro grants? Or does that vary from campus to campus?
It definitely varies from campus to campus. And, I think that traditionally what we have found, just in terms of some of the research that was done, and Dr. Miner has mentioned this before in several different venues, that, the lower range is usually around $150, but it can go upwards to no more than like maybe $1,200 to $1,500. Okay. And so with that, that really is designed to ensure that that student will persist and will graduate. And so it's not just we award you the gap dollars, if you will, but it's also that we begin to monitor you as well to make sure that you are going to continue your pathway, academic pathway, and to graduate.
Thank you. And my second question, and I guess this reflects my political paranoia, but The year-round Pell Grants are now a done deal, and they are beyond the reach of bad things happening?
Well, as I look into my crystal ball, let's hope very much so. I know it's been signed already for 2018, and so we feel very confident that that's in place. And, you know, we've been down this road before, and I know the presidents can attribute to this, that or attest to the fact that when we had it once before, it was only for a 2-year period, but it made such a big difference. And I think that I'm trying to look through some of my notes here to find, but I know that the impact that it had for 2009, 2010 was that it was about 13,000 students who took advantage of it during that time frame. And I would imagine that it probably had a pretty good effect on their graduation rates. And then in 2010, 2011, it was about 12,500 students that took advantage of it at that time. And so the beauty of it is that now the campuses have the time to make sure that we're going to assist them with that in advertising it so that students really know that that availability is there. And that more importantly, we want to encourage them, especially those that may be off track, meaning that they didn't perform as well as they would have wanted to during the academic year, that this is an opportunity to get back on track, and for some students, for them to even get ahead.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Trustee Nylon.
Thank you and good afternoon. I have a couple points I'd like to follow up on, one of which is what Trustee Norton was talking about with regard to the microloans. We talk about administrative barriers. I had the fortune of visiting Fresno State and talking to the president, President Castro, and he relayed a story that he had a student who had a debt of, I'll say, $300. And because of that, he was going to be expelled from campus. And it wasn't until he noticed that and made a change that they were able to do that. Is there some system-wide approach we can do to ensure that microloans are automatically applied, or there's some forgiveness element, or there's something that would address somebody who has a debt, whatever ceiling we put on that, that could be forgiven or adjusted, so that we do not, just by our own not being able to understand every student's need at every moment, be able to address that concern, so we will never find ourselves in a situation that, but for that small amount of money, somebody who was persisting to graduation was interrupted.
Let me just, if I may, respond quickly. It's a exceptionally important point, but there are two important nuances. One, I think the question about the threshold that's raised by Trustee Norton is an important one. Just across the country, I think this phenomenon has been referred to as sort of the flat tire phenomenon, that there are many students across the country that are one flat tire away from sort of departing from school. I think the campuses that have studied this across the country find that the threshold is really around $850. For most students, that could be a difference. There's smaller thresholds on some campuses, slightly larger on others. But here's, the other important nuance that I think is that the state of California is no different from a lot of places where, as a state entity, there is an obligation to collect revenue that's owed for services that are provided by the state. So the campuses can't simply forego the amounts that are owed. The way this was done in Georgia, which has been most famous for instituting this program, has really been done with private money. And so, I think when you look at the threshold for disenrollment for unpaid balances on campuses, there is a good deal of variability across the system. So on some campuses, that threshold is $5. Other campuses, that threshold is $1,000. So we're now taking inventory. Eric Forbes and his team are going through to review the policies across all 23 campuses to figure out if we could find a policy that does adhere to state law, but also is much more forgiving than some of the policies we have in place now.
Thank you. I think we can't lose the concept that as taxpayers, we paid for education from kindergarten through whatever level. Right. We have invested hundreds of thousands, if not, multiple hundreds of thousands, and to allow a student
to fail because of a small amount of money, 1,800, whatever, is unconscionable. So we have to find a solution, whether we get private money or we rewrite the state law, but this should not happen on our campuses. That's just one person's position.
I would just want to make a comment to that and sort of play devil's advocate, and I think it went to what James mentioned. There is sort of an issue of the moral hazard sort of part of it, and I think oftentimes maybe some of these problems that arise are the student's responsibility, and that's why I sort of like the idea at this point of the micro loan, which they, I assume, are responsible for paying back at some time, correct?
Well, so
Or
there
how
is a
does
difference between what we refer to as, or some campuses refer to as, emergency loans, right? So that there are loans available in small amounts to students beyond their financial aid package that they are responsible to pay back to the institution. This different version of a program really is a grant program where that amount of money that is provided to a student is not required to be paid back. But so I do think what we're referring to here is a micro grant program, although there are many campuses that do have emergency loan programs where students are able to make arrangements over time to repay money. But let me just go back one step and try to balance the two perspectives here. I think both of you are absolutely correct. The middle ground there is that some of the policies that are now in place to collect revenue or funds that are owed by students are put in place because when institutions go into week 7, into week 8, into week 9 of a semester without collecting revenue from students, it really does create other financial challenges for the institutions with students who enrolled. All of the presidents are not in their heads. Right. So in as much as you want to keep and retain students and have them to remain enrolled, there are financial realities for quote unquote carrying students who have unpaid balances. So I think a part of our review of the policy is to try to figure out a way to have policies that are fiscally responsible, but also give students every chance possible to meet their financial obligations.
Very good.
Thank you.
My next, just a couple more
Go ahead,
questions
take
here.
your
My
time.
next question relates to the investment in the Graduation Initiative 2025. We know that the governor's office failed to provide the $75 million we needed for an investment this upcoming year. Instead, that was put on the shoulders of the students. We know that the budget for ongoing success in the graduation initiative requires another $75 million in subsequent years. In the absence of these $75 million increments that are going to be needed, and it sounds like the legislature is not interested, or the governor isn't interested in fully funding that, when are we going to, or can we get a report back, a drill down report, I think as Trustee Taylor talks about, with regard to what will the impact to our goals and their ability to achieve these lofty goals with an exceptional plan if we don't have the funding. Yeah. That's not an answer today, but that's something that you could put on the agenda as we move forward, because we will be establishing a budget coming up here. We will need to know what amount of money will be going towards that project and how it will be paid for. So that would be important for me. I'm very interested in academic preparation in the Early Start program. Dr. Blanchard, you and I had a brief conversation that this is being reconsidered at this point for additional units and allowing campuses more flexibility rather than mandating it, and I applaud you for that. And finally, when we look at the graduation initiative, we are provided a list of consultations and very important organizations participating in this process. I would ask that you consider also your alumni. You have 3.4 million of them. Many of them are exceptional. I don't see their names listed here. You have an alumni council who's very active and, in fact, has identified the Graduation Initiative 2025 as its single focus. So they are a voice to include in your consultation. And that concludes my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Rest assured it will be done. Yes.
Trustee Carney?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the excellent work you and all of the campuses are doing on the graduation initiative. It's really interesting and inspiring to hear all that's happening. If I could, I'd like to go back to academic preparation and just ask about transfer students. So the math placement and the English placement tests are being eliminated, correct? Am I correct about that? So they're eliminated for transfer students also?
Yeah, that's a part of the work that the academic preparation work group will be considering. That is the goal, the desire to move forward with the elimination of those, of the ELM and the EPT.
Right. So then presumably that for transfer students, that will put more emphasis on the classes that they've taken that for which they want credits to transfer. So there has been some concern raised by some interested nonprofit groups about whether or not new math requirements are being added to some of the pathways for associate degrees for transfer. Could you just address that?
Yes, and first let me start by saying that transfer students are not required to take the ELM nor the EPT. So I just want to...
Anyway.
You're right.
Okay.
But I know that you're probably referencing reports that we're starting to hear as well, that CSU has added intermediate mathematics as a requirement to some of our associate degrees for transfer pathways. And I just want to make sure, and I'll start out, but I really want Chris Mallon to take a deeper dive, if you will, to make sure that we can get this as clear as we possibly can. But the reality is that, you know, there have been no additions to mathematics requirements to our associate degrees for transfer pathways. And in addition to that, neither the CSU nor the California Community College System, neither one of us have been in any way creating barriers for transfer students from the community colleges to come over to the CSU in order to engage in these associate degrees for transfer. So I'll stop there, but I just want to be clear about the fact that there's been no barrier in terms of the ability for students to be able to come and take advantage. We understand some of the equity issues that are tied around intermediate algebra. We know clearly as well that with the work that was already achieved by the Quantitative Reasoning Task Force, there was a lot of discussion and deliberation about the elimination of intermediate algebra as a general education requirement. All of that will be taken into consideration in the work that's being done now, not only with respect to the academic preparation work group, but more importantly, in terms of the work that we're doing around quantitative reasoning. I want to pass the baton on now to Chris, who can give a deeper explanation of this matter.
Well, I think you did a really good job, so I'm not sure what I can add without further questions to clarify, but I will mention that one of the questions we received was whether we have withdrawn our support of statistics pathways in associate degrees for transfer. And so first, let me say no. We still fully support statistical pathways, and I should explain what they are. A statistics pathway course that's part of a pilot program we're supporting is one that is accepted for CSU general education requirements, but there's an exception in that it doesn't have an intermediate algebra prerequisite like all our other math quantitative reasoning courses have at this point. As Dr. Blanchard explained, based on recommendations of the Quantitative Reasoning Task Force, we expect to see the intermediate algebra prerequisite move away from that general education requirement. So the concerned parties, I think, are a little out of step from where we're going. The main point is we have made no changes to math requirements for general education, no change to math requirements for our associate degrees for transfer. And the reason we make no changes is we're so fully aware that students have different majors ahead of them and different career trajectories, and we want to make sure they get the math that they need to be successful where they are without imposing any kinds of barriers, as Dr. Blanchard said, always keeping an eye on the achievement gaps.
Great, thank you.
George?
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank you and your team for adding the well-being working groups, especially when we're discussing political climate on our campuses and what our students are currently facing. And being a grad student, I've become a quantitative nerd, so I'm extremely happy and excited to see what the data-driven working group will come out with. I do have a question about the academic preparation, adding on to Trustee Carney's comments. Are we also focusing on the upper division writing exam for our transfer students and out-of-state students and international students?
In the process of consultation with all of these constituents that you've heard about, we put out there some ideas that we had for academic preparation. We asked, what haven't we thought of? What do you have different perspectives on? And one of the things that came up over and over again was dissatisfaction with the entry-level math, the ELM, and the English placement test, EPT exam, but also with our graduate writing assessment requirement, which is on many campuses called GWAR. And so we heard that, but right now we're only talking about academic preparation, how students become ready to be successful at the college level when they enter the CSU. So we'll go back and we'll look at that, and probably in the fall. We want to make sure that the faculty are all here, but it doesn't really fit the academic preparation, the scope of the work we're doing right now.
May I have a follow-up? Will we be able to maybe address that? I know that a lot of international students don't get to graduate on time because they happen to fail the upper division writing exam or the WAR, it's called.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've heard. And so when we go back out for consultation, I'm sure we will hear it again. You're welcome to participate in that also. But there will be many concerns. There will be people in support of it. There will be people thinking that it's harming students. We want everyone to have a chance to bring their perspectives to us so that we can make a very careful consideration on this.
Thank you.
Trustee Melendez de Santana.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. You know, I always enjoy hearing updates on the wonderful work that's happening, you know, throughout the system. I just want to clarify a few points. What you're really talking about in terms of increasing the math requirements of students coming in is really altering A through G, correct?
Eventually, yeah. So just to reassert that we are right now recommending a fourth year. It can just be practice of what students have done before, but the idea of having a requirement that is held for all students would have to change A through G requirements, and it would involve discussion with community colleges and the University of California.
I just wanted to. It wasn't clear the way, but what actually you're thinking of doing is proposing that in the future, because that is something, as was described by fellow trustees, something that, you know, will be something that needs to be worked out through the K-12 system as well as the community college system, but mostly the K-12. Because I find it interesting that when we discuss barriers, you know, in terms of our general education courses and looking at pathways, that there's also barriers in the way we look at how students come in and are prepared. You know, so that those barriers, they're barriers all the way across. It's all a matter of perspective, right? We see it from the CSU perspective, but I'm at some level fortunate to see it from the K-12 perspective as well. So in wanting to ensure that our students have the opportunity, especially those that are underserved and historically unable to attend college, that we provide pathways. And I like some of the work that you've mentioned before in looking at restructuring developmental courses, you know, where there is that support and intervention, and I've seen it in some of the campuses, because you know, it's a hard line to draw. I think I've heard it from what Jorge asked and what Hugo asked and others. You know, it's where you want to draw the line in the sand in terms of preparation. You know, whether you want students to be prepared at a certain level and set those expectations, or whether you say, well, if they don't reach that, they're not going to be associated with, our expectation in terms of what a graduate is from CSU, right? But I think that the challenge for us is what do we do in order to scaffold and provide that support? So it isn't that they don't pass an exam, they don't graduate, whether it's in writing. Well, what are we doing to help provide interventions and support? And what are we doing if we're going to add an additional year in the, in terms of our requirement in preparation to ensure that students from rural areas aren't excluded, or students from, small high schools, or students from large urban high schools, don't have that opportunity. So I just wanted to confirm the A through G, but also just make a statement of how important it is that we work in collaboration, which I see you're doing more so with our partners in K-12 and the community college.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in real quick. So first of all, thank you and the others for your concern about this. We're at the very early stages, but it's really important right now to be talking about these issues. The latest thinking is that no students from underserved high schools will be penalized by this. So in other words, if you go to a high school 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, when we implement these new rules and you do not have the resources, you don't have the capability of taking some of those courses that Dr. Blanchard mentioned, there would be no penalty for you whatsoever. But in the coming months and the coming years, we are going to have a lot more detail, a lot more collaboration with our K-12 partners, with the UC, with the community colleges, to make sure that not just the points that are raised today, but others that we haven't thought of that we address.
Trustee Stepanek?
Thank you. And somewhat building on some of the comments that have just been being made, I really appreciate all the work that's been going on, both in terms of the Chancellor's Office and on the campuses, in terms of the academic preparation issue and the whole issue of trying to get students to do another year of math-based type skills in high school. But, until we really have some sort of a uniform state policy having to do with K through 12, it's going to continue to be a serious problem, because what's been happening right now, and a lot of our campuses are to be applauded for their outreach to their local school districts, but it is potentially going to generate some different types of inequities, because different campuses will be able to work at different levels, and it depends on the funding of that local K through 12 school district also. And I do appreciate that we're going to try our best to try to have it down the road, that we don't, in a sense, disenfranchise any particular people. But I really do have a concern that that could be a particular issue, that unless you are going to your immediate four-year institution, there could be complications if you're going somewhere else to a different CSU in the state of California. So I think we really do need to work on some sort of a more state policy that we may need to work on, which means potentially changing the law in terms of outreaching and making sure that the public education gets appropriate funding so that they can implement for that additional year.
Any other questions or comments? I just wanted to give a shout out to President Nelson. I don't want to count our academic chickens before they hatch, but recently, I don't know if any of you read in the clips that we get, I don't remember which paper it was from, but that Sac State with their finish in 4, I was very excited to hear that apparently on track, they're trending to almost 50% four-year graduation, up so that by my sort of poor math skills, maybe almost 500% from where they were a few years ago. We won't know, I guess, until next year, really, we get all the statistics and the numbers. But I was very, very excited and heartened to hear that. And I know that a lot of that, the reasons that were given were things that we've been discussing. Once a month meeting with advisors, vouchers and discounts for programs and services, new course selections, priority summer registration, and now that we have the summer Pell Grant starting next year, that is really going to reach a lot of students. And then, of course, outreach to high schools, which can address some of the issues that some of you brought up. So I think it's very exciting, and I really can't wait till we get the numbers. I think they're going to be fantastic. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. So item 2 is an action item seeking board approval of the recommended amendments to Title V regarding non-resident determination appeals. Lauren Blanchard, Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, will present the item. Dr. Blanchard.
Thanks again,
begin.
Chair Kimbell. So as you may recall, amendments to Title V non-resident determination appeals were presented as an information item to the board in January. Recommended for board action today, the proposed changes clarify the process and timeline by which a student may appeal a residency determination. In accordance with California Education Code, a campus determines each student's California residency status for tuition purposes at the time of admission. If determined to be a non-resident, the student may appeal the initial residency status decision or the subsequent reclassification decision by submitting a written appeal to the Office of General Counsel. The proposed changes that we offer today to Title V align CSU policy with best practice to better serve our students and campuses. The changes include establishing criteria for submitting an appeal following the campus residency status decision, reducing the number of days within which a student can file an appeal, preventing lingering uncertainty for both the student and the campus, and specifying that appeals are directed to the Chancellor's office rather than to its Office of General Counsel. These recommended amendments clarify the process and timeline by which a student may appeal a residency determination. Following the March board meeting, we further considered and researched the timeline included in these changes and retained the 30-day period. We have received no questions during the public comment period. Chair Kimbell, this concludes our presentation. I'm joined by Mr. Eric Forbes, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Academic Programs, and Ray Murillo, Director of Student Programs, and we're happy to answer any questions that the board might have at this time.
Any questions, comments?
If I may, through Chair, related and unrelated, just someone the other day asked me a simple question about someone who's self-declared as homeless, how they establish residency status. How do you process that?
Turn your mic on.
I would have to look further into that. I mean, if they're homeless, we're looking at basically where they're at in California. So when you first look at the initial residency, when a student is coming into a Cal State, we're going to look at the high school that they attended. So the first indicator is going to be a California high school. And if they've had lived anywhere else outside of California, although they may not have a permanent resident at the time, or may not have, or be kind of bouncing from one resident to the other. It gets complicated because there's a number of issues that could come up with that. Certainly if they meet the criteria of being homeless in the K through 12, we can verify that and then they can establish residency. Certainly those who are former foster youth or foster youth will have residency established with the state, particularly if they're in the system. So that's kind of the initial indicators, but there's a lot of stuff that could occur that would still allow the student to establish residency for the state of California, especially if they've stated that they've never lived anywhere else outside of California.
All right. And just there's reasons I ask. I mean, there was a town hall. A few folks suggested they couldn't establish it as a consequence. Were burdened by getting the status of being out-of-state residents, despite their self-declaration. But these are all new. I imagine I have to customize a understanding and appreciation of the complexities of the individual cases. Beyond that, though, do we have any data that determines how many folks come into the state, out of state, and then reapply as in-state residents in subsequent years? And is there any gaming of that system where people take advantage of our in-state benefits after a year, year and a half, after taking a semester, or, period of time off? And how do we figure that out?
So the students who come in initially, so we make a determination for tuition purposes on residency. So the student, if the student is determined a non-resident, after a year, or however long it takes that they feel they've established residency for tuition purposes, they could resubmit for a reclassification. So that we do have. I don't have the numbers on my fingertips, but we do have that. Now, in regards to your comments in regards to a student gaming the system, it's actually very difficult to get residency once you've been determined non-resident, because there's one criteria on a reclassification that they need to prove, which is financial independence from their parent or guardian, which is a 3-year financial independence. It's not a 1 year. So in the dollar threshold is very small. It's $750 a year. It's not living with the parents for more than 3 weeks or so. And then the third criteria, I can't remember off the top of my head, but those reclassifications are very, very difficult to get. When we get calls from parents not liking the decision, it's usually about that, about the reclassification and the financial independence. Whether a student comes into the system, leaves the campus, and then reapplies, that could certainly occur, but they would still need to establish California residency during that time. They couldn't leave the state and then come back without establishing residency.
Thank you. It was very helpful. If you could provide, if you can pull that data out as it relates to reclassification, I'm curious. And the same questions are being asked at the UC, and they're also sort of pulling them together. I just want to, I don't know, I want to get under the hood on this. I'm curious how that works, but grateful for the response. Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else? Si?
I recall, Ray, I recall we had a conversation over the criteria to be considered an AB 540. And one of the discussion topics that we had is that we were going to accept one of the residency requirement as a adult education if it's taken in a California high school. Now, is that written in here, or are we going to have the flexibility to interpret?
Yeah, no, so that's in the ed code, and actually the AB 540 students don't establish residency. It's actually an exemption for out-of-state tuition fees is what they receive. But we did provide clarification when we made the change to the AB 540 stuff that we had to come in line with because of AB 2000. We did issue a code of memorandum to the campus that clarified that we are in fact utilizing adult high school and any other alternative high school to establish that 3-year threshold to for students to be eligible for AB 540, AB 2000.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay, we're all forever hold your peace. Very well. Thank you for that presentation. Because this item involves amending a provision of Title V of the California Code of Regulations, these proceedings are deemed to be a public hearing under the provisions of the California Education Code. At this time, there are no members of the public who wish to comment on this proposed amendment. Is that correct? Nobody. Okay. The public hearing is now closed. Did somebody say no? The recommended amendments to Title V regarding non-resident determination appeals is an action item before the Committee on Educational Policy. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The recommended amendments to Title V regarding non-resident determination appeals is approved. Our final item is an action item seeking board approval of the recommended amendments to Title V regarding degree requirements, admissions, and transfer. Dr. Blanchard will present the item.
Thanks again. At the March meeting, we gave a detailed presentation on the amendments that are recommended for board action today. The proposed changes clarify language, respond to board policy and recent statutes, and ensure equitable evaluation of student transcripts for admission. The amendments, which can be found in detail in the written agenda item, fall into 4 different categories: Doctor of Audiology degrees, Bachelor of Arts degrees, obsolete lower division transfer patterns, and transfer admission requirements. You may recall from the March meeting that the first group of proposed Title V sections described the Doctor of Audiology degree programs and established admission criteria and program requirements. The proposed language parallels existing sections on CSU education, nursing practice, and physical therapy doctoral degrees. The Bachelor of Arts degree is one of 6 bachelor's degrees offered at the CSU. The other 5 are Bachelor of Architecture, Bachelor of Fine Arts, Bachelor of Landscape Architecture, Bachelor of Music, and Bachelor of Science. The second set of proposed changes will make the Bachelor of Arts BA graduation requirements more like all of the other CSU bachelor's degrees that I just mentioned by removing the specification of an upper division requirement, 40 units across the entire degree. Of the changes presented for action today, this was the one for which we did receive questions from the public. We were asked why BA requirements differ in this way from other bachelor's degrees. Our research did not surface an answer. We were asked whether this alignment with other degrees would harm academic quality and whether campuses would be required to eliminate overall upper division requirements across the BA degree. We want to clarify that we will certainly not ask campuses to modify their programs in any way. However, this change does allow faculty the leeway to design programs more efficiently as called for by the board in 2005. A more efficiently designed program, for example, could have unit requirements that are divisible by 3, the most common unit value of semester courses. The 40-unit upper division requirement is obviously not divisible by 3, sometimes causing students to have to enroll in an additional course to make up a 1-unit deficiency. When this change is adopted, BA degrees will be like the other 5 types of CSU bachelor's degrees, which do not specify an overall upper division unit requirement. In all cases, faculty will establish upper division requirements for each bachelor's program. And to answer the question of quality, I can point to precedent. Our campuses offer rigorous, highly sought after, accredited undergraduate programs across all 6 types of bachelor's degrees offered at the CSU. Our third set of amendments would repeal regulations related to a now obsolete transfer program that was replaced by our associate degree for transfer. The fourth and final grouping of amendments responds to legislation that gave us associate degrees for transfer. The recommended Title V changes introduce greater clarity and allow the CSU to admit or redirect students according to that transfer legislation. Changes also maintain rigorous admission standards while ensuring equity in admission procedures. For example, campuses will be required to evaluate transfer students' academic records in a manner parallel to the practices used for freshmen. These recommended amendments serve 3 goals. First, to bring CSU regulation into alignment with California Education Code and successful practice in the CSU. Second, to clarify language. And third, to ensure equity among freshmen and transfer students applying for CSU admission. Chair Kimbell, this concludes my presentation. I've already introduced the 2 individuals who are seated at the dais with me, but I want to acknowledge them again, Eric Forbes and Chris Mallon. will join me with any questions or comments that the board has at this time.
Thank you for that presentation. Trustee Taylor?
Thank you very much, Provost Bland, for that presentation. Clarify for me, Bachelor of Arts degree requirement number 2, we're eliminating the minimum 40 upper unit division unit requirement. Got it, Chris. But are we still leaving to each department to kind of do their own thing? If a department wants to set a 50 unit minimum, can they?
They can, but the board has made the very strong recommendation that the degrees we develop be efficient and that they facilitate efficient degree completion. So I don't think that would happen. We haven't seen it with other degrees. For the Bachelor of Arts degrees, there will still be a minimum number of units, 18 or 12 in the upper division for the major.
Mhm.
We have that in Bachelor of Science programs also. The other bachelor's degrees don't have that. I don't expect there to be great changes with this because the faculty takes so seriously how these degrees are developed and also how they compare at other institutions, and our accreditors take a look at that too.
I have no doubt that they do. I've heard anecdotally there are some majors that have very heavy upper division unit requirement loads that make it very, very difficult to get through in a 4-year time frame.
There are some that are defined in Title V to have very high degree requirements, unit requirements. And when we did our 120 unit effort to try to bring all of the degree programs down, that's one of the things that we looked at and made sure that they were being as efficient as they could in terms of double counting what's required for general education and for the major. I think there is enough attention to this, especially with the graduation initiative, that if there's a slowdown in some department, it will catch the attention of the campus before it even gets to us. I just have full faith in the faculty understanding, even while they want to prepare students to the level that they should be to enter careers, that they also are completing bachelor's requirements. It's not a master's degree.
Yeah. Is it possible to get a list of those departmental majors that do require, upper division unit loads in excess of 40?
I'm thinking about the kind of information we have. Certainly I can give you what Title V requires for those degree programs that absolutely have to have high numbers of credits in the major. But for the campus practices, I can start with those degree programs that require more than 120 units, and we can survey those. It will not be an immediate answer because we don't have it in a database, but we certainly have a pathway to get there for you.
Great, that would be a good start, and then we can talk further from there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Stepanek?
I have a slightly different variation of the question that Trustee Taylor asked. This is, once again, for the Bachelor of Arts, and it has to do that we are leaving the 12-unit minimum requirement for upper division within the major, and of course just simply dropping the 40 on the overall for the degree. Do we have any readily available information about what the average number of upper division units in the major is for BAs?
I haven't canvassed every single degree program, but what I did in March was we randomly pulled degree proposals from over the last 10 years and did not find that any of them had only 12 units at the upper division in the major. They all had more.
And that's kind of what I'm curious about. And I was just wondering how close it maybe was edging to that 40, for the 40, were they free electives or really requirements of the major many times? That's kind of what I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it'd be interesting to know what about the averages for that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Once again, because this item involves amending provisions of Title V of the California Code of Regulations, these proceedings are deemed to be a public hearing under the provisions of the California Education Code. At this time, there are no members of the public who wish to comment on this proposed amendment. The public hearing is now closed. The recommended amendments to Title V regarding degree requirements, admission, and transfer is an action item before the Committee on Educational Policy. Only committee members may vote at this time. May I have a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The recommended amendment to Title V regarding non-resident tuition appeals are approved. Chair Day, that concludes today's business on the Committee
Madam
of
Chair,
Educational.
excuse me, could I just raise one item?
Yes.
Some time ago, we briefly discussed the possibility of having the topic of student well-being somewhere on the board's agenda. And I'd like to propose and actually request that we just have that as a standing report item on the agenda of the Committee on Educational Policy, if that's acceptable to you.
Yes, we discussed that. I think that would work well.
Yeah, just as we now have as a standing item the graduation initiative,
Yes.
We can certainly incorporate information pertaining to the various efforts on our campuses that not only promote well-being, but obviously promote a sense of belonging as well. So we can commit to doing that, yes.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else? I just wanted to mention before I give up my mic here, another exciting development. If you haven't heard, we have a new application portal that launches next month. Cal State Apply. It's going to simplify the process, and now you only need one application to all campuses. So how great is that?
That's pretty doggone great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Campbell. Trustee Fagan, will you please convene the Committee on Audit?
Thanks, Chair Day. Committee on Audit is now come to order. Before we begin, we'll hear public comment from those who signed up to address agenda items coming before the Committee on Audit today. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board, and we have one speaker today, Pat Gant, President of the CSU EU. Pat Gant.
So good afternoon. I'm Pat Gant, President of California State University Employees Union, and I usually do not address the Audit Committee. But I think the timing of addressing it today was important as we all look to move forward. I am not sure, or it's not clear to me on this agenda whether the Board of Trustees has been advised of a recent California State Auditor's report on the growth of management positions in the CSU. It came out earlier in May. No, it's not as bad as the UC audit. I heard that a lot from some of the administrators. But it does show that from 2007 and 8 to 2015-16, even though there was a great recession I've heard referred to today, there was a 15% growth in management personnel plan employees within the CSU. Surprising to me? No. Many of my brothers and sisters in the unions, no. We see the organizational charts on the campuses and how they sort of expand magically at the same time. The rest of our positions sort of shrink. Now, there has been overall growth in all areas during that same time period, but remember, MPPs grew at 15%. The people I represent, the non-faculty staff, only grew at 6%. The faculty only grew at 7%. And the executives, all of you in this room, only grew by 7%. So I think moving forward, we as the CSU can do better. I encourage the audit committee to do better. You should be tracking things like this to help the campuses manage and take a system-wide approach on how you apply resources to these critical positions. And I am sorry to the campus presidents that have been hired in the last couple of years that have to dig their way through this bloated middle management. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments, and it's now time for the committee to consider today's consent agenda consisting of the March 2017 minutes. If there are no objections, the minutes are approved. No objections? Okay, now time for the committee to consider today's discussion agenda. There's one item on today's discussion agenda. Item 1 of the discussion agenda is an information item. and that's regarding the status report on current and follow-up internal audit assignments. Item will be presented by Larry Mandel, Vice Chancellor and Chief Audit Officer. Larry?
Thank you, Chair Fagan. Item 1 in your agenda includes both a status on the 2017 audit plan and follow-up on past assignments. In your packet is an updated Attachment A for the status report that shows progress since the agenda mail-out. Those numbers and letters in green reflect the updates from the mail-out. The left-hand side of the first page indicates progress to date on the 2017 audit plan, which was approved at the January 2017 board meeting. As previously mentioned, because we have retooled our approach and are better able to address individual campus risk, we will be reviewing approximately 30 audit topics this year as compared to the previous 9 to 10 per year. Audit assignments for 14 topics are currently in process, which include emergency management, international activities, information security, and sponsored programs post-award activities. The right-hand side of the first page and all of the second page indicate progress made toward completion of recommendations. The campuses and the Chancellor's Office continue to do a good job completing recommendations on a timely basis. The third page gives a status report on our reviews of construction projects. Recommendations from past assignments have been completed and current reviews are being completed timely. We continue to provide consultative reviews through our advisory services function, whereby we partner with management to identify solutions for business issues, offer opportunities to improve efficiency and effectiveness in operating areas, and assist with special requests. We also continue to perform investigations as needed. If you have any questions on the status report, we'll take them at this time.
Okay. No questions? Oh, John.
Thank you and good afternoon. And I should know the answer to this question being the Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, but I do not. And so I will expose my ignorance here. Is there a policy, Larry, with regard to how many months an item can be being reviewed? For instance, I noticed that there was one that was 13, some are 8, and others. Do we have a policy that says after X number of months, this then becomes something that's identified, or a bullet note, a note to the file, or something that we can say, well, 13 months does seem like a long time, but they are making progress and we should feel very comfortable with where we're headed?
Okay, we have informal, we try to get at least half the recommendations completed within 6 months. If that doesn't happen, I make contact, my staff makes contact with the campus to find out what's happening, why not, if there's a proper reason for that. We expect all the recommendations to be completed within 10 months, unless there's some reason why, and there are in certain instances, a few instances, where it might take a year to put something in place. There might be a monetary issue. It might need to get through X number of committees on campus. So there are reasons, but we use those 6 and 10 month targets for the campuses, and we talk to those on the campuses. I do talk to the presidents periodically. They know I do. We try to make sure that everything gets done, and as you can see from what I just said in my report, they're doing a really good job. We used to have a real problem with this. Up till a couple of years ago, they would hang out there forever. Now it's a once in a while type occasion.
Thank you, Larry. I do want to commend you for the document because it gives you a very clear array of where we are. Do you think that it would be of value after 10 or 12 months that if something continues to linger, that you can do an asterisk and a little footnote that says the reason why this hasn't been completed in 10 months or 12 months, whatever you want to do, so that we can be aware that this is not a problem or aware that it is a problem?
Right. I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I think that's the end of the audit committee for today.
Thank you, Trustee Fagan. Unless I'm missing anything, I think we will be adjourning our meeting now, and we will reconvene tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. here in the Dumpke Auditorium. Thank you.
State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly.